Hereby call this General Purpose and Administration Committee meeting to order, held Monday, October 2nd, 2017. I'd first like to ask everyone to please rise for a moment of silence and to think about our thoughts and prayers are with those affected by the horrific tragedy of events that was held in Las Vegas last night. We know there were many unnecessary deaths and injuries, and I'd like everybody to think about that in our moment of silence today. Thank you. Please be seated. Item 2, disclosure of pecuniary interest, nature thereof. None. Move on to matters from announcements from council and staff. So start off with council. Councillor Somerville.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Saturday, September the 30th, Green Bank had their annual soapbox derby, and they had a beautiful day to have it, and there was a lot of kids that participated in different categories. And then Councillor Drew and myself were there to do the ribbon cutting for Pearl Park opening. They've got a lot of new equipment, and they've done fundraising, and have really done a great job on making that park accessible for children, and it's on a back street, which is really good too. Thank you.
Councillor Drew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things. I'll let Councillor Watton talk about the Cartwright Fall Festival. I was there. It was a great day, but I'll let her talk about that. And there was quite a nice turnout for the Tyler Hanson Memorial Tournament on the weekend. And I also wanted to answer Councillor Somerville's question about Regional Road 6. It was actually Regional Road 6, not 13. But the design for the Saintfield Bridge is happening this year for tune-up of, or for a cost of $200,000. It's a replacement for that bridge. And then the replacement will be built in the time period of 2018 to 2020 at a cost of over $2 million. So the upgrades to the roads would not be done until after that. And in November we will be expecting an update on the road replacement, road works and bridge works over the next number of years. So we'll expect that in November, or certainly before the end of the year. Thank you.
Councillor Watton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, I'd like to announce that on November 4th, the Scugog Housing Advisory Committee will be holding a housing symposium from 10 till 2 at the Community Center in Port Perry. There will be speakers from 10 till about 11:15, and then we'll break for lunch and resume again about 12:30, I believe. And there'll be more details as we get closer to the date. Also on Saturday, the 30th, we did have a very successful Cartwright Fall Festival and car show. The theme of the car show was Show It Before You Stow It, and the organizers of the car show figured they had about 100 cars, or 200 cars, I should say, and we had 10 participants in the chili, with the best chili judges' choice going to the Harpers, and the People's Choice was Cartwright Quality. So a good time had by all. Everything sold out, food, alcohol, everything that was there to buy was taken away, so it was a very, very good day.
Thank you. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to announce that last week we are now in receipt of a $20,000 sponsorship for the Scugog Summer Jam. It came through and is deposited into our finance department. So I just wanted to give that update.
Thank you. Other, and with that, that's a material one, so we would expect that it's going to bring forward an updated report, so look forward to that. Thanks for that good news. Other announcements from council? Just one, Councillor Drew and myself were in attendance at the Shoppers Drug Mart corporate donation with the franchisee for $10,000 to the hospital, Port Perry Hospital Foundation. So that was a good news event. And then there's going to be the LEAF campaign, which they're continuing on, is finishing up, and they're hoping to raise close to the same amount. So great example. I believe that they said that the Shoppers Drug Mart raises the most funds in all of Shoppers Drug Marts in Ontario. So that just gives you an idea of how giving this community is, especially when we're in need. So great news. Now announcements from staff. Ms. Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor. Last Thursday, we got results from our structural engineers after they did an assessment of the Seagrave Bridge, and unfortunately we had to close the bridge on an emergency basis because of the structural issues with the bridge. And unfortunately, the cost of interim repairs is not possible. It's underneath in the structure, and we won't be able to reopen the bridge until we can do a full rehabilitation of the bridge. The good news is that we did apply for funding for OCIF funding, and we're hopeful that we will be successful this time, and if we do get that funding, we will be able to go ahead with the repairs, but it won't be until next summer. So the bridge will be closed until at least then.
Okay. Chief Bernie?
Thank you, Mayor Rowett. I'd just like to remind council and residents watching our GP&A today that Fire Prevention Week begins October 8th, running through to October 14th, so that's this Sunday until the following Saturday. This year's NFPA theme is Every Second Counts, Plan 2 Ways Out, which works very well or very nicely with our junior firefighter or junior fire chief contest. We will have crews out this week distributing fire safety material, both October 10th and October 14th at two key locations in the community, to which I'm sure the residents like to visit on Saturday mornings, doing their shopping. We'll also be performing fire drills at all of the schools on October 11th throughout the community. We'll be hosting our first ever fire service recognition ceremony on the 13th, and also announcing our junior fire chief contest winner. And that person will take office on October 19th for one day only. And then finally on the 14th, we're going to open up the doors to the fire stations for the public to come in and see what's behind our doors. And thank you.
Great. Any other announcements from staff? Okay, before we leave the announcements part here, I just want to use this opportunity to recognize someone that's a member of this council that has already identified that had a celebration in the summertime, but I learned that the actual official date for their 50th anniversary is on October 7th. So we had drafted up a certificate of congratulations celebrating your 50th wedding anniversary, and on behalf of the township members of council and the staff, we would like to congratulate that officially, and if you could join us, all of us down there, for a photo. I did reach out to Len to see if he could make it, but I didn't give him very much lead time, so you have to accept it on his behalf, and I said congratulations on your voicemail, so when you get home, Len might be there. Next up, we have presentations, Advisory Committee, Core Service Efficiency Review, Mr. J.P. Newman. And we also have Christy Harrison, who's accompanying you for the real answers to the questions, right?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today we're going to be presenting our final recommendations with regards to the Committees of Council. Committees of Council was a part of our Core Service and Efficiency Review approved by this Council, and this is the final report, so I'm just doing a presentation with that report. So as we know, we're in the middle of a Core Service and Efficiency Review. We're examining the level of service and most efficient and cost-effective delivery of those services. Council approved this review of the committees with the approval of the Core Service and Efficiency Review. On March 6th, we did a What Are We Doing Now presentation. That presentation, I'll go through that a little bit later. Just an overview of the presentation is we're going through our committees and volunteers, community engagement that we conducted. Going to go through all the recommendations. There is quite a few recommendations, so we're going to go through those today, and then we're going to go into conclusions and next steps. So Committee of Council review covers a number of areas within our strategic plan. So there's financial sustainability under strategic direction number 2, municipal services under strategic direction number 4, and community engagement under strategic direction number 6. So it does cover a wide range of areas. So the What Are We Doing Now presentation was presented to Council March 6, 2017. It identified a number of areas, and I've just highlighted a few things here. Staff support, currently 14 advisory committees, excuse me, 4 legislative committees or boards, 2 quasi-judicial committees or boards, for a total of 20 different committees or boards. The budgets for committees was $20,000, broken up into $2,000 segments for committees, with some variation in there. And we identified that total staff time for each committee meeting, this includes committee coordinators and staff liaisons attending those meetings, was approximately 15 to 23 hours, depending on the committee. And just a note at the end there is that Scugog Fiber Inc., which was our municipal service corporation, got added to this review essentially at the 11th hour, and I'll explain that a little further down in our presentation. So committees and volunteers. So this is just a slide on our committees and volunteers. So a small township like the township of Scugog needs committees and it needs volunteers. We just need to be sustainable in both of those areas. I want to stress that both our committees and our volunteers are doing a great job. This review is not to say that any committee or volunteer is doing anything wrong or aren't living up to their expectations. This is just a review to try and become more efficient and effective, especially when it comes to staff resources and time. Yeah, I may have got to all that. Okay, so yeah, we're more efficient, and so the final point there that I wanted to make is current number of committees is really unsustainable with regards to the staff resources that we have at the moment. So we're just looking at to become more effective and efficient with regards to that. So the community engagement that we conducted. So in March 2017, you already heard that we did a What Are We Doing Now presentation. Following the presentation to Council, I did send that presentation to all of our committee coordinators to distribute to all of their advisory committees. So that presentation did get on the agenda of all advisory committees at that time, so that they were aware of the review, what we had informed Council of. Then on August 31, I shared my draft report with Council and all committee coordinators again, and staff liaisons, and again for the distribution to committee members. So again, trying to involve those people who this was going to affect. So they saw my draft report August 31 or thereabouts, with a deadline for comments of September 22nd, 2017. The comments I was receiving, I could have received them, I was happy to receive them individually from individual members or from the committee as a whole. If they were meeting before that September 22nd date, I was suggesting that the committee coordinator put that on the agenda and get a committee recommendation as well. Throughout September, and just on those comments have been added to my report under attachment 3. So any comments that are received on the draft report are listed as attachment 3. September 2017, at the request of the committee, I attended the Canada Day Committee meeting just to present the recommendations and some of the changes being proposed. And I also was invited to the Economic Development Advisory Committee as well. So again, just to give a brief sort of presentation and description of recommendations that we were making and how it was going to affect that specific committee. And just to note, since my draft report, some of the comments, especially when it reflects housing, they're not going to make sense to you now on the final report because I've changed that recommendation. So the original recommendation was to merge housing. I've moved away from that recommendation now. So when you see a lot of comments with regards to, Save the Housing Committee, we listened and we did change that recommendation. So that's why you might see some recommendations, some comments that don't quite make sense with regards to the final report. So with regards to my recommendations within my report, I'm just going to go through them, and I've tried to group them as best I could if they were like items, and I'll just give a bit of an explanation for each recommendation. So recommendations 2, 3, and 4 deal with budgets. So we're proposing that committees no longer get an automatic $2,000 budget, and that the request for budgets go through the budget timetable set by our treasurer. Just like any department, just like any request for budget, we're proposing that those requests come through the committee at the same time as our budget timetable. So if a committee requests a budget, we're suggesting that a treasurer position also be added to that committee. And I know for a fact that several of the committees who do receive a budget have already appointed a treasurer position, so I know that that's certainly in favor of some of those committees already. And I have seen some minutes from and Christy will help me here. I think it's the Seniors Advisory Committee who have already made a budget request. So some of the committees are already doing these things knowing that they're being proposed, so I think that's a good sign for those recommendations. Recommendation number 5 talks about meeting time and date. This recommendation is just a request with regards to the first piece of that recommendation. So we are asking that if committees could meet during the day, that they do. And the goal there is to reduce staff overtime. If those committees cannot meet during the day, again, like I said, it's only a request. So if I know for a fact that some of the committee members have come back to me and said we can't meet during the day, we have members that work during the day, that's perfectly fine. So this is just a request. The other efficiency that we identified was that committee minutes going straight to council. So previously committee minutes would go to this committee, GPNA or PCNA, and then to council for approval, which means it was going from committee to council for approval. So we identified this as just not being efficient in that respect. So we've implemented the process of committee minutes going to council. Now, in order for those committee minutes to meet the council deadline, we're asking that the agendas, well, the meetings themselves happen within the first 2 weeks of the month. As we know, the council meeting is generally the fourth Monday of the month, depending on public holidays. However, if we have those meetings the first 2 weeks of the month, it allows the committee coordinator to get those minutes completed and on the council agenda for that month's meeting. Now, if we don't get those meetings moved to the first 2 weeks, we won't be able to meet that timeline for getting the minutes on the agenda, and therefore the minutes could possibly be waiting up to a month and a half, depending on when that meeting was, for the next council meeting. So just a request there again for the committees to move their meetings to the first 2 weeks of the month if possible. Recommendation number 6 speaks to the Accessibility Committee composition. So the AODA, which is the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, requires, first of all, it requires a committee, requires an accessibility committee, and secondly, within that committee, it requires that 50% of the members to be persons with disabilities. So currently we have 5 persons on that committee with disabilities. However, 5 out of 11 doesn't meet that requirement of at least 50%. So changing the composition here to 9 satisfies that requirement. We currently have 3 vacancies on that committee, so we're not actually removing anyone, so don't think that we're just cutting someone from that committee. Reducing it from 11 to 9 just makes those 2 vacancies go away, and we still have 1 vacancy on that committee, and it brings us in line with the legislation. So that's that recommendation there. Recommendation number 7 speaks to the Heritage Permit Subcommittee. The proposal there is to return those responsibilities to the Heritage Committee. When the subcommittee was established, it was met very frequently. It met all the time, almost weekly is what I've been informed. That's not the case anymore. Some of the responsibilities have been delegated to staff, such as the signs permits, so they don't meet as frequently. The other piece of the pie is that 5 of the 6 citizen members of the subcommittee also sit on the Heritage Committee, so it's essentially the same members minus 1 who works in Toronto who just can't be there for the subcommittee meetings. So 5 out of 6 members means that this committee can meet as quickly as the subcommittee could, being that there are 5 out of 6 the same members. The other piece of that, I received comments from the Heritage Committee, both the chair and the members, and they're in favor of the merger. They understand that it makes sense to just bring it back with them, so they're in favor of that. Recommendations 8 and 9 talk about the Economic Development Advisory Committee. Tourism is a huge piece of the puzzle in terms of Scugog and the Township of Scugog, and it's not represented anywhere right now. We don't have a committee delegated to or designated to tourism. We also don't have any internal staff, permanent staff, that look after tourism. So we're proposing that tourism function be added to the Economic Development Advisory Committee. Also recommending there a name change to the Economic Development and Tourism Advisory Committee. Also proposing there, and recommendation 9 is to assume the responsibilities of the Phase 2 Waterfront Steering Committee. So the Steering Committee and the Economic Development Advisory Committee, they have similar responsibilities. They both look at the waterfront, which is a huge economic driver for the township, and they have a similar jurisdiction. So we felt that that's something that they could absorb and take on. On the Economic Development Advisory Committee, it's been within their minutes previously, within the last few months, that they are looking at doing more meetings per month. Sorry, more meetings than they currently do. So they currently meet 4 times per year. They are looking at possibly having more meetings anyway, and with these added functions, they probably will look a lot more favorably on that. Recommendation 10 speaks to the Youth Advisory Committee. The recommendation here is to disband the Youth Advisory Committee. Now, unfortunately, we've just been unable to maintain membership on this committee. And we've also identified within the library, and this comes from the CEO of the library, that there is actually a youth group that does meet at the library. They call themselves the Teen Advisory Group, or TAG, and they do in fact meet quite regularly. So the suggestion obviously is that we disband our advisory committee, but just knowing that there are other youth committees out there, certainly any of our current members will be thanked for their time on the committee, and we could suggest to them that if they're still interested in participating on a committee, there's a teen advisory group at the library, so they can certainly participate on. The other piece of that is within my report is that youth members, council could choose to appoint a youth member on any of the existing advisory committees. I know that, and this might be down a little bit further, I know that the Sierra Planning and Management, who's doing our Parks Recreation Master Plan, they recommended that probably a good spot for a youth member would be on the Parks Recreation Advisory Committee if that's created, and that's one of the recommendations. But certainly council can appoint any a youth member to an advisory committee as they wish, and you could align it with school years and things like that. So there are other opportunities. Having its own committee, unfortunately, just didn't work at this stage. Recommendations 11 and 12. So this is a recommendation to create a Parks, Recreation and Culture Advisory Committee, which would merge the Blackstock, the museum portion of the Heritage Advisory Committee, Public Art Committee, Sports Hall of Fame Committee, and the Canada Day Committee. We would recommend that one member from each of the merged committees be guaranteed a seat on that newly formed committee, and we were looking at a 9-person committee membership, which would leave 4 members' seats to be advertised, and they could be appointed. We'd ask for expression of interest and then come back to council with who would like to be on that committee, and then council can appoint those other 4 members. One committee member guaranteed. If nobody wants to sit on the committee, obviously then that would just be an additional person that we advertise for, but that's the recommendation there. So the reason for the Parks, Recreation, Cultural Advisory Committee is that as a township, we should be focusing on recreation as a whole within the township. And this has been discussed within the staff and obviously with outside as well. And we really should have a focus on the whole township and not just any one particular area. Again, I got that at the bottom there. Sierra Planning and Management also support the recommendation of a committee that looks at the whole township rather than just individual pieces. The Heritage Committee is in favor of the museum portion being removed. They openly stated that it doesn't get enough attention at their committee. They're very, very focused on heritage. So they're in favor. So the culture piece, obviously, of that advisory committee it fits with museums. Public Art Committee has essentially met their mandate once the policy is approved. So they have a policy, and we've heard that recently that the policy is with legal at the moment, going through that process. So once the policy with regards to public art acquisition policy, thank you. Once that policy is approved, they've more or less met their mandate. So that's one of the reasons to bring them in. They may not have enough just to be on their own once that is completed, and that's the reasoning there. Sports Hall of Fame and candidate committees, they host annual events, as we all know, some fantastic annual events. We're recommending there that same function be completed, but just through a working group rather than their own committee, and that's what the recommendation is. And yeah, go to the next slide, because I think, yeah, so working groups. So there's been a lot of questions and comments with regards to working groups. So Bylaw 40-16, which is the rules and procedures for committees of council. The definition of a working group means a subgroup of an existing committee and may contain committee members and outside experts, typically responsible for research and review of a topic and reports findings back to the parent committee. Working groups operate by consensus without formal procedures. So what essentially that means is that the working group, they would have flexibility. Number one, that's the biggest benefit. They could meet when, where, how, and with whom they want, and then rather than being an advisory committee, I see this as a name change, and they can just be a working group instead. So they have that flexibility to meet. And the meeting with whom they want includes staff. So the question has been, what happens to the staff? Do they just, go away? No, we don't disappear. We're still here, and we will be providing assistance where needed with any subject matter, including this. So the working group would not have a committee coordinator, so there'd be no agendas and minutes. However, they would just bring any recommendations to the parent committee, being the Parks, Recreation and Culture Committee, if they need to provide any or ask for anything from council. That'd just be done that way instead. I envision and anticipate the members being the same as present. The working group, again, is informal. They could be the same members. I don't see any change there. And like I already said, no committee coordinator provided, but staff assistance is always available. So that would be that definition of a working group. So when I say working group, this is what it means. Recommendations 13 and 14. So it speaks to council composition and voting. So citizen advisory committees are a way for citizens to have their say, as you know. Citizens appointed are usually an expert or have an interest in the subject matter of the committee. Council liaison position is to guide the committee and report back to or clarify to council. And we really only need one to do that role. The other piece of that is that council liaisons, as a council liaison or as a council member, you get to vote on all matters, because everything comes before you at council. So the other recommendation is to remove the voting rights of the council liaison position. However, that doesn't remove council's voting rights. It just means that the citizen and advisory committee members make their recommendation. The council liaison can explain it to council when it comes to council, and council decide whether it's going to be approved or not. So just removes the council members voting twice on the same matter. So if the recommendations are approved as printed, and this is within my report, I believe it's section 2.8 within my report, staff hours will be reduced by approximately 148 to 227 hours per month. That's based on the committee's meeting per month in accordance with the terms of reference. So I understand that some committees meet more, some committees meet less. But the only hard number that I had to work with was what the terms of reference say that they meet per month. So that's why you'll see some .67s and things within my table. That's the explanation there. And those number of hours is based on merging 7 committees, disbanding only one, being the youth committee, and creating one. And the creating one is the Scugog Fibre Inc., which we're going from a municipal service corporation to a advisory committee. A note on that committee is they already provide their own committee coordinator, so that we're not proposing that changes. They also meet as required, so we would propose that not change either. So we wouldn't be providing any additional staff support for that committee that we don't already do anyway. We can reduce the committee coordinators from 5 to 2. So, as you may be aware, Ms. Harrison here with us today is, her position is committee coordinator. Like every other staff member in this municipality, she has multiple roles. She's not just the committee coordinator. So she's committee coordinator plus front counter plus marriage license issuer plus vital statistics register and a whole bunch of other things that I probably missed, and she can clarify if you want more details than that. So the 5 to 2 is essentially what we can bring it down to. We're going to allow those staff members who are not committee coordinators, so the other 4 members who are currently doing committee coordinator positions, to focus on their full-time duties, keeping in mind that a lot of the committees are meet after hours, so this is overtime that these committee members, committee coordinators are doing, so it's not just during their regular hours. So we're going to allow them to focus on their full-time duties, and I can tell you they do have full-time duties, plenty of work to be done. We're simply going to reduce overtime payments by not having so many committee coordinators. We're hoping to get some coordination and cohesion with essentially the same committee coordinator across multiple committees, so everyone's getting the same information. And just a note that we may use more than 2 committee coordinators just to align departments with a committee. So the Parks, Recreation and Culture Committee obviously makes sense that the committee coordinator be someone from the recreation side of the municipality. So that's just a note there that we can reduce it from 5 to 2 with these recommendations, but we may use 3 just to align certain things with departments, certain committees with departments. So in conclusion, so this is the proposed list of advisory committees if all the recommendations are passed. So very quickly, you've got Accessibility Advisory Committee, legislated, can't get rid of that one, but we've made some changes to it. Environmental Advisory Committee, Seniors Advisory Committee, Grant Advisory Committee, Healthy Lake Scugog Steering Committee was a part of this review, but is a little bit different in that it's a steering committee, and some of the recommendations when it talks to only one council member and non-voting don't apply to that committee because it's different. It's made up of, I think it's 10 outside organizations, which all have 2 representatives. So it makes sense that the township have 2 representatives, they both be voting as well. So that's a little bit, that's just a little bit of difference with that one. The Economic Development Advisory Committee, which we propose to absorb the Phase 2 Waterfront Steering Committee. Housing Advisory Committee, which the museum component is removed and put in the Parks, Recreation and Culture Committee. And Heritage Permit Subcommittee is absorbed. Parks, Recreation and Culture Committee will merge Blackstock Recreation Advisory Committee, Museum Advisory Committee, Public Art Advisory Committee, Sports Hall of Fame Committee, Canada Committee. Number 9 is Housing Advisory Committees, remain a standalone committee. And number 10 is the one we created, which is the Scugog Fibre Advisory Committee. So we added that one, and just a note on that one, as a municipal service corporation, they have to provide themselves insurance, which costs money. We decided, in consultation with the committee and the mayor who sits on the committee, that it makes sense to just make them an advisory committee. They fall under the township's insurance that way. And we don't have to have that expense of director's liability insurance for that corporation. So that's just a note on that one. Excuse me. Okay, so next step. So depending on obviously what is what is passed here today, we will then go back and update all the terms of reference as required, depending on what's approved and what's not approved. We will then advertise vacancies on committees. We heard at the last council meeting that I think it was seniors were looking for members, I believe it was. Yes, seniors. So we'll go through that process, and like I said, it didn't matter at that time. We were going to do that anyway upon this review being completed, and I hope it's completed this month. So we'll advertise for committees, vacancies on committees. Moving forward, we'd like to use criteria in Bylaw 40-16, the rules and procedures for committees, before establishing any new committees. So you saw that table within my report that scores those committees. And there's been another suggestion with regards to leaving this decision to the next council. Not recommended, because the next council will have their own option to create what committees and what committees they don't want in any case. So my recommendation today is just pass a recommendation, whether to do it or not to do it, but the suggestion to leave it to the next council will only delay the next council appointing committee members, because if it's unsure, then we will have to bring this report back to them at that time and say, this is all the committees that we propose, and you'll have to appoint all the members. So just suggesting whether it's to pass the recommendations or not, I think just don't leave it for the next council is my recommendation. They'll have their own decision on committees in any case, because they'll have to appoint all the members for the new term. So when we bring that back, it'll be up to them to make those appointments, change the committees as they see fit. What we recommend here today is what staff believe is the best for the corporation right now. I think that's it. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Newman and Ms. Harrison. I will, before opening up for questions, I have that Councillor Somerville was going to move receiving the report, but I want to bring forward item 10.2.2, which is the full report on it, so we can deal with it at the same time. So I have moved by Councillor Somerville that the presentation be received and the recommended motion before us. So we'll receive the report first and then bring forward the other one so we can keep that one on the floor. So receiving the report, or the presentation, sorry, Advisory Committee's Core Services Efficiency Review be received. Moved by Councillor Somerville. All those in favor? Carried. Now, Councillor Somerville's moved the recommended report, and now open it up for questions. So, Councillor Drew?
Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering if we can divide the recommendations. Does that need a motion, Mr. Clerk, to divide? Motion to divide?
Yeah.
Okay, motion to divide. What you wanting to divide?
I was suggesting that 1 to 7. We could move ahead with that, as well as 13, 14, 15, and 16. And also number 10. I think those ones probably could go through, and I think that probably 8, 9, 11, and 12 needs some discussion, or from what I'm sensing, there's some discussion required there. So 1 to 7, 10, and 13 to 16 inclusive. And 13 to 16, yes.
Basically 8, 9, 11, and 12 to be left.
Left, yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that 12, 13, 14. So item 8, the tourism, to be added to the mandate. Item 9, the Phase 2 Waterfront Steering Committee. Item 11, which is Blackstock Rec Committee, Museum portion, Heritage, etc. And 12, the Parks, Rec and Culture Advisory Committee, composition being 9 voting members. Okay, so motion to divide. Put forward by Councillor Drew. Councillor Back?
Thank you. I would like to have some of them removed as well. I have some issues with some of the other numbers.
Okay, so a motion to divide is put forward, so I'm getting the sense that it's not going to be easy with a motion to divide without... What items were you talking about, Councillor Back?
Oh, so let's see here. Number 5, 8, 9, 10, 11. Number 13, 14, 16.
So you're saying those ones to be dealt with?
Yeah, we need to
Okay.
discuss this because I don't want to just quickly pass those.
So, I mean, there's one motion to divide for 8, 9, 11, and 12, but Councillor Back, you're saying there are more that you would like to be dealing with separately, so to save this from being confusing with a divide and then another motion to divide, I'm just looking at... A friendly amendment? Okay. So, no, Councillor Back, just to be clear, you're adding 5, 13, 14, and 16? Is that what you're saying?
So basically, we would be passing 1 through 4,
Okay.
and the rest would be 1 through 4, 6, and 7.
1 through 4, 6, and 7. 16 is the bylaws, right?
No.
Okay, 16 you want to discuss, and then 15 was okay? That was the MSC, or you want? No, I'm just asking if, just to make this clear, if it's a friendly amendment, that we can deal with this one. You do? Okay, so 15 is pulled. So you'll accept 12 is already pulled. So Councillor, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7 are to be divided off and voted on as recommended. And 10, sorry. And 10. Any objection to that motion or comments? Okay, so just go here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 10. Accepted as friendly amendment. All those in favor? Carried. So now with the remaining items, any questions to on the presentation, or go off with Councillor Drew first? Were there questions that you had? You start, because 5 was the first one that... that was... Councillor Back? Okay, Councillor Back?
Thank you, through the mayor. So, and our clerk did a great job on this report. It's very thorough, and you can tell that there was a lot of thought going into this, and it is appreciated. It's something that we've, I think, all thought that we've had way too many committees. With regards to number 5, being held during the day, and you said yourself in the presentation, I'm uncomfortable passing this because I think we really need to get more comments from each committee, and the time commitment, if they can indeed come during the day, and if they can't. So I would like to either omit that or have it delayed.
May I just make a suggestion of maybe some enhanced language there to say if possible or something, so that it's not expected of them, but it's just encouraged if it's not going to. And I would ask the clerk just to expand on that, because that was a conversation that we had.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Council. So the section number 5, recommendation number 5, is that a request be made. So it's not a you shall do this, it is a request to be made. So I've already received comments back from some of the committees saying we just can't meet during the day. Fine. And this recommendation doesn't tie the hands of that either. It's simply a request that if you can, please do. If you can't, that's fine also. So omitting that is is fine if that's the will of council. I mean, well, anything is fine if it's the will of council, but it is only a request. It's not a you shall do.
So just since you're on that, obviously it saves the township overtime wages if it's done during business hours. So that's why I would prefer it to be in there, but making it clear that it's if possible or if it's still effective. But I'm looking at the rest of council and their input on the thoughts of that. Councillor Watton, were you discussing?
With respect to the overtime, is it because of the collective agreement that we have to run it through business hours, or could we not have the days of committee meetings that staff would perhaps start 2 hours later if they had a committee meeting to attend? I mean, we managed to pull that off for our public works, so I don't know, and I don't know what's involved, but is there some way that could be looked at?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through to the council. I'm not familiar with the wording in the collective agreement. I'm sorry, so I can't advise one way or the other on that, I'm afraid.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think what we found here is that the overtime is necessary because of the workload, the general workload of the staff person. Really doesn't solve anything. Staff member start at 10 or 11 and work 3 hours into the evening, because they still have a full day's worth of work to carry out just with their regular duties. The overtime is being booked in addition to the regular duties.
Is being a committee coordinator not part of the regular duties?
The staffer has designated responsibilities, I guess, that do include committee coordinator, but are of the level that are the core functions of the job that some of the community coordinator work is done during the day, but the night meeting portion is over and above their regular core duties. So I think what we're trying to say.
So in the overtime hours, does that only reflect the 2 hours of meeting time or the hour of meeting time that these committees have a staff person at?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's my understanding, is the overtime that's booked is for the meetings. Other than if it's a specific event, and the event's on the weekend, or after hours and those staff assigned to that committee are expected to attend, then those hours are claimed as overtime as well.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments, or Councillor Cat?
Thank you, Mayor. Is there any way we can vote on these separately?
So, on that, we've divided off the motion that's there, so I'm just going to look to the clerk for procedurally if we need to change that, what your understanding is of the remaining items, if we're dealing with them one after the other.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Essentially, you'd just be dividing the rest of them,
right,
and dealing with them one by one. So
yeah,
certainly council can do that if that's the wish of council.
So that, just wanted to understanding with the motion to divide that the items that we're dealing with are being dealt with individually. Or do you need extra resolution for that to make that clear?
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The councillor, Councillor Cat can certainly make a motion to divide each of the remaining items, and then if it's approved by council, then certainly they can be dealt with one at a time.
Okay.
I'd like a motion.
All right, Councillor, looking at her, any questions on that motion to divide each item out, so that we're dealing with each one individually? All right, the remaining ones, starting with number 5 here. So, okay, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, so we'll continue on with item 5. Any more comments or questions? I'm still looking to see what's the motion, and I'm actually now looking to see, we have Councillor Somerville is the original mover of the motion, even though it was been divided. It's still Councillor Somerville. Correct, Mr. Clerk, on your records?
You would need a motion for each
one.
You need a mover for each one now.
Okay. So, Councillor, I'm just going to go back to Councillor Back, who had pulled that over, if you're moving that as it is and then with recommendations, because you're the one that had initially pulled that or wanted that divided.
Yes, if we can add what the clerk's wording was for the, what was it, the request, or may,
So
if possible.
that a request be made to each committee to hold their meetings during township business hours if possible, and that all monthly committee meetings be scheduled in the first 2 weeks of each month. Do you want, I'm trying to make this grammatically correct, but if it was if possible at the end of it?
Whatever makes it easy for you.
Because both items were requested if possible, right? You're saying the first two weeks is obviously, if people can't make it and the committee's not going to happen, then they still keep it. They just have to be aware that it's going to take longer for those minutes to reach the council meeting, correct?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's exactly correct. Yeah, so this is a request. And for the second part of that recommendation, have the meeting in the first 2 weeks, committees will be advised that if they do not have the meetings in the first 2 weeks, they're likely not going to meet the council meeting agenda for that month, depending on when the council meeting falls as well. As you know, we move them for public holidays, so they'll be advised of that, and if they're still okay with that, then that's fine.
Okay, so if possible, can be added behind both of those statements? Is that the way you have it? Okay.
Yep.
All right, so, any other questions on that, amended, Councillor Kett?
Thank you, Mayor. To the clerk, how many committees do we have that don't meet during the day?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to the council, I don't have that number off the top of my head, but I can certainly work it out. It's most of them, I know that much. Probably better off looking at it which do meet during the day, so I know, and Ms. Harrison could probably help me with this. I know Canada Day meet during the day, sometimes, had the meeting during the day. Economic Development Advisory Committee meet during the day, so Healthy Lakes Scugog meet during the day. Environmental. Housing. Seniors. Okay, which three? So Heritage. Yeah, so Heritage Committee meet in the evening.
It is no more.
All right, Councillor Kett, did that answer your question?
Well, I'm just wondering how many committees it actually affects.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't really even affect most of them. So I'm wondering why we put this in and why we don't take this out and just request that the committees, when possible, can meet, if possible, could meet during the weekdays, because I know that there's a lot of business people on the Heritage that can't meet.
Councillor Back?
Thank you through the Mayor, especially the Heritage. It's essential. One of our members is a Heritage lawyer that works at the City of Toronto, and she can't get here until 7:30, so it's imperative that that is an evening meeting. So I think the wording is proper. Those that can work and meet as they do already in the day will continue to do so. Those that work in the evening or meet in the evening, if they can, if all possible, meet in the day, that's great. But if they can't, that wording should be in here like that.
So, and I think, we want to make sure that these committees are recognized for their volunteer time and effort. That's by no means is this review to take that away. But it is just to, if it's possible, and I think that captures it, so, all right. So having said that, Councillor Back, as you put forward, okay, any other questions on that then? All those in favor? Carried. Next, item was number 8, which was Councillor Drew. Are you moving this as it is?
Not as it is. I would just recommend that the name change not happen. The name change is suggested as Economic Development and Tourism Advisory Committee. Tourism certainly is very, very important in our township, but so is agriculture. So I think if we just left it as the Economic Development Committee, and it would encompass all of the aspects of economic development in our community.
And I'm just curious, because I know that they have a tourism component to it that was missing before, and many of the other committees that I see at other municipalities have tourism. Are you referring to the agritourism, or?
No, I'm just referring to the change of name. I'm sorry, I'm more looking at number 9, but sorry, it is number 8. I just want the words tourism taken out of there, because there are many facets to economic development that the Economic Development Committee deals with. So to pull out tourism only is not really reflective of what the community, the committee does, because they also, you know, talk about agriculture, and they talk about manufacturing and all sorts of things within their mandate. So it just to recognize that they do a lot of work, not just not to single out tourism.
Mr. CAO, could you add to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and appreciate that comment. I would just add that what we found when we were going through this review was a significant gap in how tourism is dealt with in the municipality, and in particular with the forthcoming report by Central Counties on a community tourism strategy, which was just before the Economic Development Committee and will be coming forward to council later this fall, that we needed to give some profile to tourism and to make sure tourism was receiving the proper attention that it needed. Currently, the mandate for the Economic Development Committee, I believe, does not include a tourism mandate. So this was discussed by the Economic Development Committee, and they felt that tourism, or they were in favor with adding tourism to the name for those reasons. And although due respect to Councillor Drew, you know, we would recommend that the name be expanded to include tourism, to give the tourism portfolio a little more oomph, I guess you could say. Currently, it is economic development related. I agree with that. Tourism is economic development, and Scugog is probably the center of Durham for tourism in our mind, and just needs a little more profile. That's the reasons for the addition.
Just further to that, then, I certainly agree that tourism needs to have a high profile within the Economic Development Committee, and should do. I just don't think it's the only thing that they deal with. They deal with other aspects of economic development, but I will bow to the will of council on this.
Okay, Councillor Ted had his hand up next, then Councillor Watton.
Thank you, Mayor. There is a tourism facet of the economic development, and I agree with Councillor Drew that I think it's just expanding too much. Do you add on agriculture? Do you add on industry and everything? I think economic development basically says it all, and short and sweet.
Councillor Watton?
I concur with Councillor Ted and Councillor Drew as well. And I also have, it's all well and good to be adding tourism, and I don't think that tourism should not be part of the consideration of economic development. But at the last meeting that the clerk and myself, and I believe the CAO was there as well, they did speak to not being able to address all the items on their agendas at their quarterly meetings. And we are now talking about adding 2 more facets to this committee. And even if they increase their meetings, I have a concern that they won't be able to give, in particular, tourism, the attention it needs, as well as many of the others. So I know that everyone was in favor of having a focus on tourism. I am not convinced that those sitting around the table at the economic development realized it would fall into their portfolio, so to speak.
Councillor Back?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with our CAO. I think that adding the tourism name to the EDAC, are you surprised? I think it does give it the oomph that it needs. Yes, economic development encompasses everything in a sense of trying to attract new business to our industrial lands, promoting our agricultural, rural areas, businesses, our downtown, but I think there's tourism in all of those aspects, which maybe this committee can then look when they're focusing on an agriculture part. How do we connect that to tourism? And when we're looking at our downtown core, how do we connect that to tourism? How can we promote? And when you're connecting with the tri-counties, it's essential. I mean, that is such an opportunity right now to really launch this township way beyond what it has in tourism already. So I really do think that they need to see, and it's sort of a circling the wagons on everything that they do and every decision that they make in EDACT reflects how is this going to promote our township as tourism.
Councillor Somerville and Councillor Guido have not spoken to. I'm just looking to see if you want to speak to now, because I am going to say my point of view too, but, Councillor Somerville?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur too with the economic development. I think that encompasses your your industry and your agriculture. They're all meaning the same thing, economic development. Tourism, I think, is another facet, and we really need to, that needs to be promoted in the Economic Development Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does funding from Central County Tourism depend on whether or not we have a dedicated Tourism Advisory Committee?
Funding depends on having a strategy approved by Central Counties. That strategy is coming forward, and then the recommendations within the strategy are fundable through Central Counties once that strategy is approved. It's I don't believe directly related to calling the committee by name or having a committee responsible for this. However, I can tell you that we're doing work with the region to try to get both financial and human resources support for the tourism portfolio, because it is, in my opinion, underserviced. In fact, the Economic Development Advisory Committee passed a motion at the last meeting asking the region to dedicate human resources to the tourism portfolio for the 3 northern communities, similarly to what they meant in terms of the 1 day a week staff resource that we received from the region. And I've been following up with my counterparts, and I know Councillor Drew at the region's been following up in a similar manner. Tourism needs attention. Again, tourism is number 1 in the township, and I believe the township leads the region in tourism. We're the center for festival events. Our Canada Day is the most well-attended and most politically represented of any in the region. And so when we pass the strategy, we're hoping to give it the attention it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. May I ask another question then? Once that strategy is passed, is that when this council would send our request or our support for that one day a week body here for tourism, or is this something that we can send in advance, that this is a motion that we'd like to pass to seek support from the region?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That recommendation will come through the Economic Development Committee's minutes for endorsement, but in addition to that, staff plan to add that recommendation to the staff report that will wrap around the tourism strategy that will be coming to council. So there will be an opportunity for council to endorse that based on a staff recommendation and from the minutes of the meeting from the Economic Development Committee.
And if I may ask one further question to our regional councillor or to the mayor, when does the region start working on their budget? And if they're needing to budget for a staff member to come up here, wouldn't we want to get that endorsement down sooner rather than later?
Thank you. They're working on their budget now, and I've already, the CAO have already made some comments and about having a tourism person up here to be considered through the budget, and we're dealing with staff. Both of us are doing that as we speak because the budget process is underway.
Okay, so just so that we're clear on where we are right now, item 8 has been moved by Councillor Drew with the tourism being added as the mandate but not changing the name. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, my comments are is that I think that we should have the Tourism Advisory Committee or tourism as part of the name because of the the extra clarity it gets, the amount of responsibility that the Economic Development Committee takes on, the BIA representative, the Chamber representative, and tourism is a large focus of their time, and I know they're working closely with Central County's Ontario Tourism, and I've seen many of the other municipal advisory committees that ExDev has tourism as part of it. That's not taking away anything from agriculture, in my opinion. There's agritourism, my personal opinion is that we should add the name, especially if the Economic Development had already created a subcommittee of tourism, that they could wrap that in if it was an ad hoc working committee, that it's clearly in their mandate. So that's I agree with the mandate and I agree with the name change. But Councillor Watton, you had some further comments?
Well, I've heard the Canada Day referenced, and I've heard us being, a top festival destination and so on and so forth. And I would suggest that was not the workings of the EDAC committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You're right, it sure wasn't, and I think that's another reason to have more focus on that committee, on tourism. The tourism portfolio, I can tell you through the work we've done on this committee review and the work that myself and senior management have done looking at the needs of the municipality, is underserviced. This, again, I'm just going to say, tourism is a major part of what Scugog is all about. It is economic development, yes, but it's also, I think it needs the attention, needs to be given to it to bring forward its need, and that attention will result with even more success in the township. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments on the motion put forward by Councillor Drew without the name change? Okay. So we'll vote on Councillor Drew's motion without the name change. All those in favor? Okay. Okay, it was lost. So, I'm just looking for somebody to put forward as recommended, if Councillor Back. Any questions on that, including tourism in the name? All right, all those in favor? Carried. Next item is number 9. Councillor Drew, are you moving that as printed?
I think it needs some discussion on the Phase 2 Waterfront Steering Committee. I'd like to hear from staff as to the status of the actions that with the old mill, and if in fact there is a lot more work to do by the Waterfront Steering Committee due to the fact that there's some movement on the mill.
Okay, Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd be glad to update council with respect to those actions. So firstly, in terms of the role, as I would see it, for the Phase 2 Waterfront Advisory Committee, there is still a review that needs to be done with respect to the waterfront from the library to the south side of Queen Street. What's been determined by council, of course, is the future of the old mill. So, from the old mill's perspective, council has given staff direction to, firstly, that the old mill is going to be retained, that staff were to go out with an RFP for a design of a public square that would wrap at least two sides of the old mill, on the west side, adjacent to Water Street, and on the south side, adjacent to the extension of Queen Street, roughly, and to proceed with that RFP, which staff have done and did issue over the summer recess and reported to council on that in the last GPNA meeting. In addition to that, council authorized staff to prepare and issue an expression of interest. That expression of interest is yet to come back to council. We did receive 2 proposals that staff are refining with the applicants. These matters were discussed with the Phase 2 Waterfront Advisory Committee, and they did approve the the proposal in principle, subject to seeing a little more written documentation. So, in summary, there is a purpose for the Phase 2 Waterfront Committee around someone to bounce some of these ideas of the old mill by, but council have made decisions on the old mill and have given direction to staff to proceed in a certain direction. So I would see those going back there for information and endorsement, not so much for recommendation. However, the rest of that area, including the marina, the Latcham Center, and the regional pumping station, still needs to be reviewed and a strategy developed. That is still the mandate of this Waterfront Advisory Committee.
Then, yeah, I realize that a big piece of this puzzle was the mill, and there has been an approval in principle by the advisory committee. I'm wondering though if there's still enough work, because the rest of the puzzle's pretty big too, with the marina, the Latcham Center, the land, the rest of the land there, and I'm wondering if there's enough work there for that advisory committee to stay intact at least for the next year or so.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Well, there is still considerable work to be done there, and now that the decision's been made on the old mill, I think that this committee can turn its mind to that remaining space. What at the staff level we've been contemplating is bringing forward through the capital budget process some consulting assistance for this committee. Despite great efforts on their part, they've had many ideas, but they haven't seemed to formulate into a strategy, and I know they've been waiting the outcome of the old mill, but I think they could benefit from some expertise and someone to help focus their ideas, package them, and then bring them forward to council. And we're looking at bringing forward some capital project of small dollars to help them in that regard, and for council's consideration, of course.
So are you suggesting that as a working group they have a consultant come in? Do you think that that's appropriate to have a consultant work with a working group where there's no minutes taken?
I think that just based on what's transpired to date, I think it would really help them finish their mandate, and that, of course, would be with staff's participation and someone to help them formulate their ideas, put package a proposal, they could bring that forward. That could be done in a working group.
All right, Councillor Kett.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm still confused on why the mill's even in the Waterfront Steering Committee. Since it's in the Heritage District, and the Heritage Committee has not even been approached about anything other than the front patio or town square. So I'm still wondering why it's in the purview of the Waterfront Steering Committee when it's in the Heritage District, and the Heritage Committee is not being advised of anything that's happening with it, even though in June last year it was noted in the minutes that they would be notified.
Mr. Seo.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to the Heritage Committee and their role with respect to the old mill, the Heritage Committee will be consulted and will participate when we're at a point where their input is needed. At this point, all we've done is awarded the RFP as of the square. As the square design commences and evolves, there'll be consultation with the Heritage Advisory Committee, of course. And as any changes or proposal for how the look and feel of the old mill might change through an expression of interest, they will be consulted, of course, and their feedback sought. At this point, council have approved the direction to date, and there's really nothing to consult with the Heritage Advisory Committee about. The reason it's being considered by the Phase 2 Waterfront Advisory Committee is because the mandate of that committee is that area between the library and the south side of Queen Street, and fully falls within their mandate. So they're involved in things that are not related to the heritage aspect of the building, just in terms of the future of that space and the strategy to get us there. So I hope that explains the difference. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity to just add something there. Councillor Burkett brings up a good point there. We currently have 3 committees looking at the same piece of land. So I think a part of the idea for putting the Phase 2 Waterfront into Economic Development Advisory Committee, it would reduce that from 3 committees looking at that same piece of property to just 2, being Heritage for their heritage aspects and EDAC for the economic development portion of it. So I think the point is well taken that it's certainly a part of that. The reason for merging is to reduce the number of committees looking at the same thing. There's certainly some cross jurisdiction there.
I'm not sure if maybe the communication should be a little bit better between the committees or of what's going on there, because it seems to me that we're putting the cart before the horse when we don't go to Heritage first and say, this is what we're thinking about. Is it a good idea? Instead of just trying to ram it. That's the cart with the horse.
But I think that in your analogy there, the cart hasn't been created yet. So there is no cart before the horse. It's still being built.
That's true, except they're trying to push a cart with no wheels. So let's
just stay on.
If you don't build it properly, go to the engineers, which is the Heritage.
Well, okay, I apologize for continuing on the analogy there. Let's just stay focused on that. I take of what the CAO has said is that it's still to come to Heritage when there is something that's created, and I do recall the conversations that it is to go to Heritage for commenting, and we expect that as council for it to go to Heritage. Just it has not at that point yet.
I believe my point is, why doesn't it start at Heritage and say?
But I think you're missing it.
I'm not missing anything. I'm saying.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. We're discussing item number 9, and we're getting into the weeds. We're just talking about adding Phase 2 Waterfront Steering Committee to the Economic Development and Tourism Committee.
Point taken there with the Heritage. I do believe that the conversation is involving the waterfront as opposed to you're talking about Heritage. So I just want to sum it up that the consultant is creating a report as well for the waterfront, for the square, and then the other aspects are still yet to come. As far as I know, like, there's nothing that has been finalized, so that will make its way around. So, but that doesn't take away from this recommendation here that the Economic Development and Tourism Advisory Committee absorb the Waterfront Steering Committee. So, Councillor Watton is up third here.
Thank you. Is EDAC aware of the responsibilities that are going to be added to their terms of reference with respect to the Waterfront Steering Committee?
Mr. Clerk.
I mean, they were outlined here. They were not outlined at the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The engagement during my presentation, we've been advising our committees all the way along. In terms of what the tourism piece and the wording of the tourism hasn't been developed yet. So depending on council direction today, we'll develop what the specific wording within their terms of reference will look like. But certainly the Economic Development Advisory Committee were advised at the committee meeting that I attended that tourism be added to their mandate. So they were certainly aware of that. The specific wording of what that looks like hasn't been developed yet.
My question is, do they understand that we are now encompassing the Waterfront Steering Committee responsibilities in the mandate of tourism? Because I'm sure that was not understood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through the council. that wasn't my intention, that the Waterfront Steering Committee be a part of the tourism function. The tourism function would be added, and the Waterfront Steering Committee mandate would be added. So both of them proposed to be added to the Economic Development Advisory Committee. And yes, they did note, yes.
I would question that, having attended that meeting, but again, I have a great deal of concern with giving too much work to these committees. They're volunteers, they give their time, they already are struggling with meeting all the demands of the portfolio they already have, and now we're adding two fairly extensive profiles to their committee, and before I could support this, I would certainly want it to be put out in clear communication and have written confirmation from the EDAC committee that they support this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the other piece to that is they were provided a draft copy of my report. So all committee members were received a draft copy of my report, and this recommendation hasn't changed since that draft report. So they should be aware that that is a function that we're proposing to add to them.
Are they aware that it includes the big pipe? Are they aware that it includes the Latcham Center and so on and so forth? I do not believe so.
Councillor Wheel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Watton did touch on many points that I wanted to suggest when I had a turn to speak. Being a member on the EDAC committee since this term of council started, we have struggled to even be able to accomplish things that have been on their work plan for quite a while. And to suggest now that they are going to be responsible for the future of the waterfront outside of the mill is a large order to ask them when they're still struggling to get directional signage done and stuff that really is directing people to our downtown core. I would support what Councillor Watton has suggested, that while they have received the report, perhaps the clerk could direct us to the spot in the report where it outlines that they are responsible for areas such as the Latcham Center, the library, and the marina, and that perhaps we do need to consult, considering we currently only meet once every 3 months on that committee, to ensure that while we have very, very capable people on that committee, that they're actually able to assume all these additional responsibilities.
Councillor Kett?
Thank you, Mayor. To Councillor Watton's point, I am on the EDAC committee, and very rarely do we get through our agenda. Am I right? You're right. Yeah. And the people on the EDAC are mostly made up of advocates for business and that. I've also been in attendance at most of the Waterfront Steering Committee, and it's a completely different group. It's more of a design-oriented group. So asking the people from a number of advocates from different agriculture, industry, retail, things like that, to come into a different situation, it's going to be difficult to get any kind of decisions at all.
Councillor Back?
Thank you, through the mayor, and I have a few, so bear with me. And just with regards to what Councillor Kett just said, the Waterfront Committee has 2 engineers. One is in charge right now of the redesign of Union Station. We have a tourism expert as well as 2 marketing directors on that particular committee, which I think is well equipped to take on the scope of what the Waterfront Steering Committee has on their plate. With regards to that, I really am opposed to the Waterfront Steering Committee being disbanded. I believe that that is a very focused and very important and integral part of what's going to happen in the next 10 to 20 years in our township. The waterfront is a jewel. It has such opportunity, and we need to make sure that it is done properly. And
we don't want to mess this up. And so we don't want to have it as sort of, part of a huge committee where they already have too much on their plate. It needs to be, this current committee, the majority of the members have been together since 2013. And so they've been working hard on this. I know the old mill, the structural engineering was a big piece of the puzzle. Now we're past that. Now we can actually start looking at what are we going to do with this space. And I agree with the CAO again that 2 for 2, that we do need to bring in, and we did have a presentation. I forget his first name. His last name's Baxter. I believe you went to school with him. That is a professional in that field. And what he had brought to us and what community engagement can happen with that, I would love to see that come as the Waterfront Committee. I do not want it as a working group. I think it needs to stay intact, and now we can start focusing on where we're going, because now the old mill, it's off the plate, so to speak. With regards to the Waterfront Steering Committee as well, we have not had a chance to meet like the other committees. I don't know, we haven't had, obviously we had a bit of a hiatus when we were waiting for the report for the old mill. We did get that report in. We did have a verbal presentation of an expression of interest for the old mill use. To my knowledge, and to the chair of the Waterfront Steering Committee, we did not endorse that or approve that particular use. We just, took it as, accepted that verbal report. It wasn't...
Just through the mayor, it was approved in principle.
In principle, but not as a green light. And we have not met as a committee to approve those minutes of that meeting. That needs to happen before, if this Waterfront Committee is disbanded, because that's a very important, we need to make sure what exactly is, because the chair does not even agree with that. With regards to the report, the Waterfront Steering Committee did not receive that report because we didn't meet. When this report was brought out, we have not met. And that also was, the chair reached out to me and said he did not receive it. He saw the report because he's on another committee, but as the chair of the Waterfront Steering Committee, they have not received it and haven't had a chance. You would think such an important committee and a suggestion to be disbanded, why there's no remarks in here regarding that, it's because they didn't receive it. I'm on that committee as well. I believe Councillor Guido can concur with me. So, in addition to Councillor Watton, I believe that this particular number, so it's number 9, should be deferred until the EDAC committee is fully known what is expected of it. And I think the Waterfront Steering Committee should have a meeting, and they should also invite the clerk, so that first off they can have the report, they can read it, they can prepare suggestions and remarks. And I really don't think that this particular one should be disbanded. It's a concentrated focus, and we can't mess this up. I have much more to say, but I think it's easier just to say let's take it off and defer it.
So, motion to defer is time and place, so...
I would say for this particular one, to defer and bring it back for the actual council meeting in probably November, because we need to have this Waterfront Steering Committee have a chance to meet, and we need EDAC to have a chance to meet, and for those minutes to come forth.
Okay. On the motion to defer, Councillor Watt?
No, I just have a question. If we've already spoken to it, are we able to defer it?
yeah, go ahead for, clarify the procedural rules before,
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. No, the motion on the floor right now is the as-printed motion from Councillor Drew. A motion to defer has to be decided before the main motion is decided on, so you have to decide on the motion to defer first.
okay, so, motion to defer.
Number 9?
So, Councillor Guido?
I just wanted to advise that the next EDAC meeting is not till November 24th. So if we're wanting to have EDAC comment on workload, then this would be pushed past the November council meeting.
So this is to do with the time and place on it. Did I not recollect that the EDAC was going to do more meetings, plan more meetings? So this might be a way for them to schedule something sooner before then, but to have time. On the motion to defer time and place, any other? We have EDAC at November 24th. Our council meeting is scheduled for the 27th. I'm looking to see if there's going to be enough time if the EDAC chair would call another meeting, or that would be up to them, but I think the longer we push this, it obviously crosses over that we won't make it for the new year with the changes, but to be...
Through the mayor, it's just number 9. I'm not asking to defer the whole report.
So the date, November 24th?
I think
November 27th?
I think that's realistic, but then we also have to ensure that the Waterfront Steering Committee has a meeting scheduled as well, because I don't think they do.
Okay, so motion to defer on the November council meeting. All right, all those in favor? Carried. So next item is the youth committee being, we've already dealt with that, effective January 1st. Councillor, this one was being pulled by Councillor Drew. Does anybody else want to move it as it is so we can begin discussion on that? Councillor Kett? Any discussion on it? Oh, Councillor Drew wanted to effective January 1st, 2018, Blackstock Recreation Committee Museum portion, Councillor Watt?
I'm sorry, but I'm going to start sounding like a broken record, but again, I think we're putting too many committees into one. I've heard it in somewhere in this report, it said Heritage was in favor of the museum portion being removed because the museum doesn't get enough attention at their meetings. I think that's what I read, or maybe perhaps the clerk mentioned it in his presentation. I think we are doing the same thing. I can speak for the Blackstock Rec Committee. The meeting they did not have a meeting to discuss this, consideration of the merging of these committees. I have spoken to at least 3 of those members, and I can say that they are all against it. They feel that, again, the voice of the community will be lost, and that those that are passionate about the Sports Hall of Fame perhaps aren't passionate about the Blackstock Recreation Center, or those passionate about the museum are perhaps not passionate about the Sports Hall of Fame, and so on. I would like to see this truly given some further consideration.
I've had a lot of feedback that people are, and I know that to the clerk's credit, he said it was not a reflection of these committees, but I'm afraid many of those members on these two committees are taking it quite personally, and I think as a whole, we need to keep that in our forefront consideration, because we need these volunteers. They do a lot of work for us, and I really think that it's a very important component of our considerations.
So just to add to what Councillor Watton has stated about that, or to clarify, I don't know if it's clear the way that it's written in the report, and it's my understanding that these still stay as groups that are collectively dealing with the situation or dealing with their own mandate. It's just that one of the representatives, ideally the chair, would also be on the parent or umbrella committee. So I don't know if the clerk or the CAO want to just add to that the clarification of specifically that umbrella committee.
You're exactly right. I don't envision any change with respect to those merged committees in that there's a name change. They will go from an advisory committee to a working group. As I said in my presentation, a working group doesn't get a committee coordinator, but that doesn't say that staff aren't available to assist as needed. So the members, I would suggest and envision, if this is passed, that they would be the same members. They would have that name change, but other than that, members would be the same. They would just report through the parent committee, as the mayor has stated, and that's really the only change. And we would guarantee, like I said, 5 positions from each of the 5 merged committee on the newly formed committee. But I think Parks and Rec, and you only have to look at our budgets, and then that's the biggest piece of the pie, is Parks, Recreation, and Culture. So I think it makes sense that we have our overarching committee that looks at the whole community in that respect, rather than just sort of individual pieces of different sections of that. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If I may, further to that, then perhaps you could point out to me where it suggests that all these committees have working groups, because I only read that 2 of them, the Canada Day and the Sports Hall of Fame. Is there a suggestion of that they become a working group? And in the beginning of the recommendations, you recommend that one person from each committee would go on to these other committees. And that's how it's being taken, and that's how it's being read.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I mean, I had some comments back from the Sports Hall of Fame committee specifically, and I did respond to them that I do envision them being a working group. So there are certainly members within that committee that are aware of that, and that was the goal. The working group, I mean, I envision it that way. A lot of it will be up to the committee themselves. If they would like to create a working group on these subject matters, or other subject matters that they see fit to, within the Parks, Recreation, and Culture sort of umbrella, they certainly can do that. But certainly it's, I envision it being wholly the same, and those functions would carry on as they do right now, with a different name.
One final comment to that. If it's a working group, and then now it has to report to another group, and then it will come to council, I think we're muddying the waters even more. And I really simply can't support this suggestion.
Yeah, just another piece of clarification. We saw for the Sports Hall of Fame committee, just specifically, they reported to council through a staff report. So again, I don't see that necessarily changing. So they're not acting as a traditional advisory committee in any case. We saw a staff report from Ms. Robinson, Brenda Robinson, who provided the information to council. So they're not acting through their minutes like other advisory committees. So that's just an example that they did their recommendations through a staff report. So again, I don't envision that changing. Okay,
Councillor Guido.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask, I have two questions. One is going to speak directly to the Sports Hall of Fame, but seeing as though we're segmenting line by line, I had written down, my question initially was, what is staff's feedback regarding these changes that we're making? And it'll lead into my question regarding Sports Hall of Fame, but as staff, or the committee coordinators, are they supportive of this change in reduction of committees, or was there feedback that suggested it may not work, seeing as though they work directly with these committees?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Council. Staff are in support of this recommendation, all of these recommendations. As you're aware, I did share this information with all of our committee coordinators so that they could review it and provide comment to me as well. This report, again, and the recommendations were vetted by the senior management team meeting. This is not just me suggesting these recommendations. This is a collaborative effort, certainly with respect to all aspects of the report, but getting down to the scoring of committees. That wasn't me, that was in combination with the committee coordinator, clerk's office, staff liaisons. I had several meetings with various staff members to go over this report, and we hashed out differences of opinion and things like that, but I haven't received anyone that says this would not work from a staff's perspective.
Okay, thank you. So then if you can indulge me with respect to how Sports Hall of Fame is going to work. I think we can all agree that committee is a committee that's envied by many municipalities. In fact, Uxbridge has approached them to ask how they can start up such a successful committee. And right now they rely very heavily on the support of Brenda for not only meeting coordination, but actual tasks that need to get done in order to put on this evening. If they are now a working group, what is Brenda's role in this working group, and what changes is the Sports Hall of Fame going to see starting January 1st?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Council. I don't envision any change, apart from she won't be doing agendas and minutes any further. As a working group, we don't assign a committee coordinator to a working group, so other than that, I don't see any change. The group, same members, like I already said, I envision them being the same members. As a working group, have the flexibility to meet how they want, when they want, with who they want. How they want, they can meet over the phone if they choose, or they can get together in any location and meet. Excuse me. In terms of the items that Brenda would do for them, Ms. Robinson, they would just they would just make a list of things that she would normally do. I'm sure she's very aware of what she has to do each year in any event, because she does it every year. But they can just provide her a list of items that they would like her to do, and then she would do them like she normally does. So, again, I don't envision that changing, apart from no committee coordinator, no agendas and minutes from the working group meetings. They would still come up with their list of items and things to do. They would then provide that list of items to Brenda, who I am sure that is not doing those items at the meeting in the evening. She's doing them during the day, so I don't envision that changing. She'd just be given a list, and away she goes like she does now.
So, further to that then, Mr. Newman, if the chair would be providing that list of action items, how many iterations back and forth do you think it would take for the clear message? And I'm not reflecting anything on Mrs. Robinson by any means, but if there's confusion with what the committee had asked or working group had asked, and then the back and forth will start with action items, which may work in reverse of efficiencies if we're having to seek clarification back and forth. And then my second question is, if we did want the committee coordinator to attend one of our meetings, be it we're coming really close to an event, is there a process for us to request through her manager to have her attend, and how does that approval process work?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to the Council. Again, I don't envision any change there. They would still request a staff present at that time if they need it. I'm, again, sure that Ms. Robinson's attendance at every single one of their meetings, without having to do agendas and minutes, is not required. There are going to be meetings where they simply go through applications or anything, whatever they would do to decide who's going to be awarded this year, that doesn't require her attendance. So I would suggest that it'd be the same. They would just, okay, this meeting, we need to speak to Brenda about that. ideally, you set up a meeting during the day. If not, I'd ask her to attend her evening meeting. So again, I don't envision that changing as it is right now.
What I do envision changing with this then is that Brenda would need to prepare an update of the action items that she's been assigned from the previous meeting, and that action item list would need to be submitted to the committee, working group, who would then review Brenda's action items that she's worked on, and then if we have questions from those action items, like, was this really called, did you pick this up, did you do that, that list of action items would then need to be returned to the committee coordinator, or Brenda in this case, and then I just see that the cycle gets larger. While we're trying to look for efficiencies, I see that the cycle could become muddier if we're having to go back and forth without her presence at the meeting.
I think email is a wonderful thing. I think there's an email that says, here's your list of items, and there's a comment section, and she emails back, I did this. I think you can trust that if Brenda says, Ms. Robinson says she's done it, I'm pretty sure I can trust that she did it.
And I absolutely don't mean by any sense the way, and Mr. Belfry, you can go back to Brenda and reiterate that I am not doubting Brenda's ability whatsoever. She can run this show all on her own. I'm well aware of that, but I just think when we're communicating back and forth in email, sometimes things aren't as clear as when you're actually attending a meeting. And believe it or not, there are 2 members on our committee that do not have email.
Do they have a phone? Yeah, so I mean, not to be cut that, but there's ways of communicating without having to be in person, so I think that doesn't change. If there's clarification needed, like there is for anything, I think that clarification can be received. I'm pretty sure that Ms. Robinson doesn't need any direction anymore, having done this event for a number of years. I'm sure she could do it without any direction from the committee. So I don't have any concerns about her not being able to fulfill that function as she has for the past number of years.
Nor do I. It was more of a productivity and efficiency.
Mr. CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe just to add to that and hopefully clarify this further, if you're looking at a standing committee, or pardon me, a working group, rather, there would not be, the intention is not to have an administrative person with the working group that does the agenda, the minutes, some, photocopying and preparation of some of their documentation, but does not mean that there wouldn't be a technical person, the person that has in the past completed work at the staff level to meet the objectives of that working group, which was formerly an advisory committee. So, for instance, like the Sports Hall of Fame committee, I understand that Ms. Robinson did a lot of work that wasn't administrative, so to say, to serve that committee, but was a function to make that Sports Hall of Fame committee work, and their night and ceremony function properly. That would continue, and if that meant that she was to attend those meetings in that function, the intention is for that to continue, as it does in some of these other working group committees. It's the administrative side, not the staff support side. Same would apply for the Canada Day committee. There's a tremendous amount of staff support there at the staff level. That's not the minutes and agenda, but help make it happen. That would continue. So I think, as Mr. Newman had indicated, we don't see a big change here other than the administrative support. Thank you.
Councillor Drew?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Clearly, this number 11 is causing a lot of concern, and the questions and the comments are very good. The amalgamated groups really, as Councillor Watton has said, really don't have a lot in common with one another. And I particularly, I want to pick out, like, the Public Art Committee, for instance. I see really as an ad hoc after this year, and I know that you say later in the report that they just want to finish this particular mandate, but should some piece of public art, for instance, be offered, then the committee can get together. But who do they, reporting to a committee that also includes the Blackstock Rec, I can't see that there's going to be a lot of interest in that advisory committee. The Canada Day Committee, I'm not sure fits into this one either, because as was mentioned before, this is more like it's more of a tourism thing, and I would hate to impose anything else on the ECDev committee, but clearly I don't see that there's much correlation between that and the Public Art or the Blackstock Rec or the museum or the Sports Hall of Fame. So I think this number 11 needs some more work. There's one other point that I wanted to make, and that is in your report on page 28, 2.1, committees should also not be directing the actions or work of Durham Region staff, but certainly not of, I don't think our staff either. Is that correct? Am I correct in assuming that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, you're correct. Excuse me. Both regional staff and township staff.
Okay, so just in the previous discussion with Councillor Guido, we talked about you just need to give the committee coordinator, the former committee coordinator or staff person, a list of things that need to be done. So that kind of goes against what you've said in the report. So I think that number 11 needs some work.
Councillor Somerville?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I agree. This number 11 is really, it brings in a lot of different perspectives. And I would hate to be on the Parks and Recreation Cultural Advisory Committee because, just like Councillor Drew said, they don't coordinate with each other. And if you've got 9 voting members, this is going to occur as of effective January the 1st, 2018. This is only like 2 months from now, so you really 3 months from now. So you really do have to start really putting some pressure on these to figure this one out, especially when it's made up of one member of each of the merging committees. So that one member has to come in and to this merging committees and make a decision on something that the other ones don't even know about. So I can't support number 11, and I won't support it until there's a little bit of different rewording of the words here. My apology, but I just don't like the whole thing merging together.
Any other councillors speaking to it? So I've heard lots of people, lots of councillors wanting to see more time or this to be worded differently. Is that I'm taking a motion to defer this like the other previous one? I just want to remind council that this, I mean, we've tasked the staff to do efficiency review, and this is the report that comes before us with recommendations. I want to emphasize that it's by no means meant to take away the existing committees. It's just the structures change so that those members stay in those groups. Addition of an umbrella advisory committee to make it so that it's more of a holistic approach instead of a siloed approach with different interests, that there could be an overarching committee that takes everything into consideration. And this to me is important for when we're dealing with a Parks and Rec plan that's coming before us, and it'd be nice to have one umbrella corporation that can deal with these issues and other issues too, where we don't have a advisory committee for the Schoolog Rec Center, for example, yet there's one for Blackstock. I would assume that this overarching committee would then take care of all of those generalized themes for the entire township. So I do support there being this, but I am hearing that the council wants to make sure that this is worded properly and that we're taking all the concerns into consideration. So, Councillor Watton, you would like to?
Well, certainly, I would like to see, as I've heard as well, I'd like to see this reworked, and if it's going to be working committees, then I would like to see that come as a recommendation and with clear guidelines on how these working committees are going to work. But as I said previously, adding one more meeting to, I think there's nothing wrong with a working committee coming directly to council rather than having the second intermediate or second committee in the middle of it. We have our hall boards, they do their presentations. You know, we have that expectation that they have to come once a year to council, so if we move from working groups, why not let them just come directly to council as well? And just give them the voice they need and the voice that's expected from how they perceive their community and also from their communities.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I think staff have heard council, and we'd be pleased to take this back and rework it, re-clarify it, answer some of council's concerns, and bring it back for further consideration.
Just looking for, if we're doing a motion to defer, what a date? Is there a required, do you need a motion to defer this, or is this going to be staff direction? Yes. So yes, we have actually, Councillor Kett had put the motion on the floor there, so, and I haven't heard a motion to defer from any of the councillors, so if this is the intent of council, I will be looking for a motion to defer. Councillor Drew, motion to defer, time and place. Looking at staff.
27th, May, November, like the other?
So November 27th, just like the other date. Okay. November 27th, motion to defer. All those in favor? Carried. Nope. Next item is the number 12, Parks, Rec, and Culture Advisory Committee. Councillor Drew, are you moving that as printed? Or was that?
That should be.
Okay. Sorry, that's part of the same one, so since it wasn't moved together, I would suggest I need a mover for it and then a motion to defer after. Moved by Councillor Watton. Okay, yep. So, there's nothing in our rules of procedure that says the mover can't defer it as well. Okay. Moved by Councillor Watton. Motion to defer by Councillor Watton. Time and date will be the same as the previous item. All those in favor? Carried. Next item is 13, Councillor Back. Are you moving that as printed?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Any questions?
Yes. So my first is, how many other municipalities have only one council rep on a committee?
I look to see if Mr. Newman, do you have an answer, or is there reference to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to council. In my experience, it's been one. I can't speak to the 444 municipalities in Ontario, but in my experience, it has been one. I didn't survey them all, is what I'm saying.
Okay, because I have concerns, because most of these committees, you know, we have great volunteers, and those volunteers step up because they usually have an interest in whatever said committee is, be it heritage. A lot of them have the heritage buildings, EDAC, obviously they're business owners in town, etc. And then a councillor represents the rest of the populace. And then within council, we have urban, we have rural, and we have island needs, which are all very vast. And unless you're the mayor or the regional councillor, you really don't have connections. And myself as an urban councillor, I don't get calls from Ward 1 or Ward 4. So I could be making a decision or a recommendation or information that may help urban populace, but may adversely affect the rural. So I don't think, and it doesn't cost the township anything to have councillors on. We don't get paid overtime. I wish we did. We don't. So I think you do need to remember that 22,500 people can't get into a board meeting. So we need to have representation of the people and not just people that have self-interest in whatever that particular committee is. And with regards to being on call, I don't schedule my life like that. I don't want to be on a page. So, that's fine if you don't have young children and you don't have other commitments. I can't just, at the drop of the hat, get a call and say I have to come into a committee meeting. I don't work that way. So I have problems with this. I'd like it to be stricken.
Okay, all right, so you moved it as printed, so I'm gonna circle around here with the other questions. So, Councillor Kett?
That's well said, Councillor Back. The problem I have with this is taking a vote away from councillors and taking councillors off of committees means that we're not giving the vote to the other 22,000 people in Scugog. It's exactly what Councillor Back said. You're taking it away. What you've got in most of the committees are advocates, like Councillor Back said, and they're pushing their agenda. There's somebody got to be in there to vote and to represent the rest of the people that pay the bills.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That recommendation doesn't remove councillors from all the committees. It's just that there'd be one with one alternative. And the purpose being is that council liaison is there to guide the committee. If there's certain matters that this council has maybe decided on or couldn't do or could do, they're there as that liaison to certainly voice those concerns or voice those changes that may need to occur. In terms of taking the vote away, yes, it's proposed to take the vote away on the committee, but this council makes all the decisions, and the vote is here. So it's just taking away voting on the same matter twice. And I think that's the clarification there, that this council makes the decision of the corporation, not the committee, not the advisory committee. It's not done at the advisory committee level.
The fact that of having one councillor on a committee, especially, I noticed that none of the notes from the environmental committee were put on, because they were astounded by the recommendation of only one councillor. They said that all three of the councillors that they have, they want to keep because they represent the rural areas of Scugog. And it makes no sense if recommendations aren't made by the people. People have someone that they can approach to represent them, to have a vote. If it's not voted for in the committee, then it doesn't go to council. So council doesn't get to vote on it. So you need the representation of the people to be there. So taking a vote away, I've never even heard of that. I've looked in other committees in other municipalities, and I've never seen that. So I'd like you to address that too.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council. I didn't add any environment comments because I didn't receive any environment comments. Every single comment that I received is in my report. If the councillor has comments, I would have encouraged him to provide them to me because he was aware that there was that ability to respond, and I was adding every single comment I received. So I apologize they got missed, but I didn't receive them, so I can't add something that I don't receive, I'm afraid.
They were added into the last meeting, the only time when they were presented with this package.
So,
and I believe, are you, no, Kim Cox? Anyway, and I'm not sure who the staff is for it.
I just want to highlight a couple of things that these advisory committees are exactly that, advisory committees to council, and as been noted, the council makes the ultimate decision. So I agree with the fact that you wouldn't want a councillor's agenda to make it through the advisory committee to come to the council. It's the citizens that are on that are representing it, that it should come back as an independent advisory group. So having three councillors on a committee, for example, when you reference that, with voting ability, means that it's diluting the citizens that are on there volunteering their time and committing to it. I'm not saying that's taken away from the representatives, because as was already noted, your councillor, all of this council represents all the people they've been elected to represent. So that's what this is trying to correct, and make sure that our committee members that are volunteering their time on there don't feel like this is a an extension of council, that they're actually able to bring forward their independent advisory view.
Well, I totally disagree. The council members are there to represent the people and to bring up ideas from the people. Like I said before, there's a number of advocates on committees that have one agenda. And there's other people in the community that are supporting these committees.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you that the committees don't have representation from council members, but I know from sitting on committees elsewhere in the regional committees, it is exactly that. You're there as a liaison to the committee, to the council, and there's one representative, and you're there to answer any questions at a council-like setting here because you're a representative on that committee. But it is truly the advisory committee that is leading that charge. So I think when you have more than one committee counselor on it, you do open yourselves up to being, especially when the quorum is just met and there's more counselor than there are citizens, it does give a false optics, as in my opinion, that it is really a council committee instead of a committee reporting, advising to council. So I don't think that's any secret that is a concern that is expressed by, maybe not all the committees, but definitely some of the committees. In the comments you see it too. I think that we're still keeping that voice from the committee to make sure that the counselor there can keep the committee on track. So if they're going down a road that they shouldn't be going down, or they think that maybe they're off track, that counselor is there to make sure that they, likewise, that bi-directional, that council information is also communicated back to those committees. I do support in there being less council representative on the committees. I think not taking away from the work that's been put forward by the councilors that are on there or the committee members. I think there's a great deal of work that is done on these committees, especially a small populated municipality like ours. We depend on these committees, and we really appreciate them. But we also want to make sure that they are effective and they don't have too much weighting in the wrong direction. So I know, Councillor Kett, you may disagree with me completely, but my point of view on the committees is they should be that, and that's what I see other municipalities do as their advisory committees.
Okay, you're right. You're absolutely right. I totally disagree with you, and I can't support it, and I'd like a recorded vote.
All right, that is...
Mr. Mayor, may I still speak to this?
Oh, we're still going around here. I've got...
Okay, because I'm only on number 13.
Yeah, you're on 13. You haven't moved 14. I know what we're dealing with, that. It was referenced. We're just dealing with the one member.
So I wasn't going to call point of order. I just was waiting for you to...
So, Councillor Back, I got you, then I got Councillor Kett. I'm just going to make my ways around and then come back to you.
Okay.
So, Councillor Drew, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. Thank you. I totally agree with what you've said, Mr. Mayor, and I would like to add that as far as the advisory committees, we are looking for advice from the public, and to have too many people on the committee from members of council, it's intimidating to many of the committees, and I know that for a fact. With regard to the alternate member, I see that as, unless it's a case of an emergency, someone, one of the council members taking sick or having some emergency, you know what your schedules are. And I know that I sat in for a meeting last week. I was asked 3 weeks ago to sit in for that meeting. So I don't really see myself or anybody else being on call unless it's an emergency has cropped up and a member of council can't make a meeting. But we know what our schedules are, and we can book an alternate when we know.
Okay. Other councillors comment? Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I ask the clerk to comment on the belief that for some committees you may not start a meeting or hold a meeting without a councillor present? Is that the precedence for all committees, or can a committee still continue whether there's a councillor there or not?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Council. We had this situation come up recently with the Accessibility Committee, and Ms. Harrison and I reviewed the terms of reference, and nowhere does it state that the committee meeting couldn't continue without a council representative. So that meeting, whether it's occurred or not, will go ahead as planned. And I think that's only fair to the volunteers as well. If they turn up for a meeting and just the council is sick that day, for any reason, I don't think it's fair to then just say to the volunteers, turn around and go home. We'll have to reschedule just because a council member can't attend. So I think that is the norm. That obviously we'd like the council liaison there to guide the committee. However, it's not within the terms of reference that we saw.
Thank you. So then that would suggest that whether or not we have an on-call or whatever it's referred to in here or not, that the committee will continue to hold its meeting whether there's a councillor present or not, or councillors present or not. Okay. Thank you.
Other councillors before I go back to Councillor Back? Councillor Back?
Thank you. I'm through the mayor, and just note as well, there's a few committees that I sit on that if I don't attend and I don't have a vote, there's not a quorum. It happens all the time. So that's to that point. Secondly, if we're going to have that we're on call, then I don't want to be on call because I don't operate that way. I don't. I need to know exactly what my schedule is. I have too many wheels moving. I can't have people on call for on call to on call. Otherwise, I'll be dumping my daughter off at Councillor Guido's house. And she may be on call. So, it's life. This council represents our population, and we're all in different stages in our life, and, we shouldn't be reprimanding some that have younger children. And I just have to reiterate the point.
I think that's...
Well, I would like this to be changed then.
Councillor Back, when you're referencing, I just want to make sure that that's clear, that by no way is this disadvantaging or taking into consideration those who have younger children or not. It's not intentional, just the way that you
I think it is. Actually, I do think it is, if you're on call.
But Councillor Back, I think the alternate is the words that's used, and it's also, you can choose to be the alternate or not. It's your choice. So I don't want this to be, it's not something that's being delegated to you to be on call. It is totally a volunteer position. If you happen to be putting your hand up that you want to be the alternate, well then you're recognizing what comes with that.
Well, I would not be on call then.
That's your choice.
Yep. So, I really do think, and I just want to reiterate the point, there's urban, there's rural, and there's island, and they have different needs and wants, and perhaps we need to look at each of the committees and see where those voices should be had, versus people that are just interested in whatever that particular committee is that are volunteers on it. Because you do need the voice of the people. That is what a council, that's what a government is.
I know what you're referencing with the wards, but as a councillor, you are representing all of the township. So your vote is for that. You reside in a ward, because somebody could technically be representing a ward that doesn't even live in that. They could live in another ward. Just so to remind everyone here that the decisions we make is for the whole of the township, and yes, we want the voices from those other areas, and that's why we have a ward structure here, is to encourage a cross-section of people in those areas, but we make decisions for what's good for the entire municipality.
But at a committee, if I'm urban, all of a sudden am I now a councillor at large? I don't represent rural. So how do I, if I make a decision or a recommendation to a committee that comes into council, yes, we can duke it out here, but I would be hesitant to make decisions that could adversely affect rural, and I didn't realize it.
Yeah,
I don't think that's fair.
You, on those committees, you are representing the entire township. That nowhere did it say when the members of the council are representing, currently the committees are on, that they're representing urban or rural. It is, helps guide those representations that, for example, if there were committees that were dealing with the environment, that it was suggested that it goes across, but it didn't mean that there had to be rural representatives. They could have been urban. It doesn't matter. There's no reference to rural or urban when we were dealing with council, committee advisor, council liaisons for it. And I do want to also stress that all these advisory committees are public, so you could be as an alternate, or not even as an alternate, or the designated one can attend all the committee meetings anyways. So it's public, it's open there. I would suggest if somebody still feels they want to be part of that because they've invested all this time with it, and they are the alternate, that they would be attending anyways, because that's what they're passionate about, or that's what they wanted to be a member of that committee for, because it's closer to something they'd like to be a part of. So I don't think that taking it that way, that it's trying to reduce the representation from the population, or change the representation, or narrow the focus. We want to make sure that the advisory committees are doing exactly that. It's a vehicle for volunteers from the community to advise us before we make decisions. So, do you have anything else that you... Okay, any other, before we go to recorded vote? Councillor Guido?
To that point, Mr. Mayor, this may be more of in the weeds and semantics, but will it be up to you as head of council to determine if this motion goes through, who's on which committees? And if that's the case, will the committee coordinators be sending the meeting invitation to both the councillor and the alternate so that it's on their schedules?
Those logistics have not been fully hashed out yet, but I would suspect, just like in the past, that a reach out to the existing members to find out first if there's any volunteer people that want to take an alternate position versus the actual member, to determine that. And if there can't be an agreement, then probably it would fall down on my shoulders as a recommendation, but it will still come back to this council to fully ratify in a council meeting. For sure, reaching out to the chairs of the committees would be part of that process.
And while you're doing that and reaching out to the chairs of the committee, if there's a specific committee, should the motion go through that there's only one councillor, if they express a desire, need to have multiple councillors on that committee, would that be considered at that point?
If this motion passes as it is here, then I would not be entertaining that, because we've already dealt with this at council.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Now, just Councillor Watton.
Could this, when perhaps be changed by date only, so that the current committees that will remain in existence, you won't have to make that decision, nor will we. And after the election, then it would be new council members perhaps anyway.
Mr. Clerk, did you want to add to reasoning for the date of January 1st?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to council. January 1st just gives us an opportunity to update the terms of reference and update the bylaws. So depending on the decision of council, we will then begin work on our terms of reference and updating those and updating and amending those bylaws as needed. January 1 just simply gives us that time to bring that before council in November or December to implement any changes made by council today.
I'm not suggesting that you change the numbers from, I'm suggesting that rather than for this one, that the date, the effective date for this to occur would be after the election.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I already addressed that. I don't think it's not my recommendation for this council to make decisions for the next council. They're going to have that opportunity to make that decision anyway, so I would suggest either pass it as printed or don't pass it or some alternative to it, but deferring it to the new council is not my recommendation, because that new council will have the opportunity to make this decision anyway, regardless of what the decision is today.
I have it removed now.
Okay, so just so Councillor Watton, are you amending it? I'm just, because that was my next question once I went through, was to clarify this motion has been moved as printed, and the conversation isn't carrying on as it's printed. It's about concerns, and I haven't heard any motions to amend. I haven't heard, so now I'm just looking, are we amending this? Is there a motion to defer this, or is...
Remove it. Which could happen through a vote.
So, and then I'm going back to the clarification on Councillor Backett moved this there as printed.
I only did that so I could speak, so I would accept the friendly amendment.
So Councillor Backett, it's your motion, so you...
Then remove it, please.
So you're...
I will do a motion to remove number 13 and
No.
keep status quo.
So just for procedures, you would be doing we vote on it, and then it could be...
What would you like me to do, Mr. Mayor? Do you want to go ahead with this as recorded vote and then make another motion to remove it? Or if this doesn't pass, then it's removed? Or do you want me to make a new motion to say remove it?
So we've got moved as printed. You could amend it. It's been asked for a recorded vote. You could withdraw your motion if you wanted to. But if we're dealing with this and it's going to be voted down, I would suspect that if there's going to be something dealt with afterward, that a new motion would come forward after it. So the choices are you can keep it as is and we go to vote. But I still have to go through the rest of the councillors that are asking questions on it.
You can withdraw my first motion and take my second motion.
So you're withdrawing the motion, your second motion is?
To remove it.
It's not, yeah, the status quo is to not put it on it's not being included on there, so. It's cleaner if it's, because of the clarity on this, Mr. Clerk, what would you prefer for direction? Because if it gets put forward and is voted down, then you know clearly what's happening with it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As printed motion is being withdrawn, I would suggest, and this is up to Councillor Back, is that you should make a motion to maintain the status quo. I think that's where, I think that's the direction she would like. So if that's correct, I would say motion that the status quo with regards to council composition be maintained.
Okay, so to keep clarity on here, motion by Councillor Back.
To keep status quo, please.
Okay. Questions on that motion?
Recorded vote, please.
Recorded vote by Councillor Drew. Questions on this motion to keep it status quo? Councillor Somerville?
Yes, could I have clarity? Is this including number 13 and 14?
It's just currently number 13.
Thank you.
Questions from other councillors? Recorded vote by Councillor Drew, not the motion as printed there, but keep the status quo with references to that.
Councillor Drew?
No.
Councillor Back?
Yes?
Councillor Guido?
Yes.
Councillor Cat?
Yes.
Councillor Somerville?
Yes.
Councillor Watton? Mayor Rowett?
No. So 5 yes, 2 no. So carried to keep it as status quo. Councillor Back, item 14.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, I concur with Councillor Kett with regards to not having voting rights. I understand that we can bring it back to council and discuss, but my concern is a lot of the committees I'm on, I'm one of the attendees at quorum. That's my concern. Otherwise, we're all going home and that agenda gets put forth to the next meeting if a quorum happens, and no business gets done.
So Councillor Back, what are you putting forward?
Status quo.
Motion to keep status quo. Okay. Any other questions from council? Councillor Guido?
Question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To quantify what Councillor Back has said, is there multiple meetings that are not being able to be continue without council representation there? I'm just curious which meetings those are.
Through the mayor to Councillor Guido, so Heritage, Seniors Advisory. Let me think. Just trying to think of all the ones I'm on. Waterfront, Accessibility for Councillor Watton. EDAC, does the environmental ever have issues? Yes, lots of them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council. If we're canceling meetings because there's no attendance, I mean, it questions the purpose of the meeting, and it questions whether we have enough members. So I think that's more of an issue of number of members, are they available to attend, and it can be addressed through the update to the terms of reference. So we could either appoint more members to the committee if the current members aren't attending, or change the terms of reference so that the quorum is less. It doesn't have to be half, it can be stated within terms of reference, so it can be changed to less. If that's occurring for every single committee just named, then we should be reviewing that absolutely, and we can address that through terms of reference changes, for sure.
Councillor Kett, next.
Thank you. I'd like an explanation. I just called question. Can I
Would
not
you like
do
an
that?
explanation of that?
Yes.
So you vote on, you put forward a motion to stop the discussion on something. If you receive the support on that motion, then we just go right to vote and stop questions. Is that all your question was, Councillor Kett?
Yes.
Councillor Drew?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to ask about the quorum, so my answer is that the number for quorum would be adjusted if there is one less member voting, which would be the councillor. So that makes sense. The other thing that I support this for 14, because I've noticed in a lot of the minutes of the meetings that a councillor has made every single motion, or nearly every motion of business within that meeting, and that clearly says to me that that there is, I don't want to use the word intimidation, but that the members are reluctant to put forth motions or to put forth their ideas. So I fully support number 14.
Councillor Back?
Thank you. Through the mayor, so if this were reworded and the addition that the clerk just added, that there will be an adjustment to terms of reference, I think I would be okay with that. With regards to a lot of the motions being put forward by councillors, it's because a lot of people don't put their hands up. Councillor Somerville will know at the library board, to get someone to put their hand up to put a motion up is like pulling teeth. I don't know why. It's not that they're intimidated to put a motion forth. They all vote yes to it, but nobody seems to want to put a motion forth. So I take question with saying intimidation. Any of the committees I sit on, I've never intimidated anybody. They're always a jolly sort of environment, and I take question to that comment, actually.
All right, Councillor Back, you started off with saying if it was changed, it's your motion.
So I'm just going to add that to it. That's why I'll put my hand up.
I missed what you were adding to it.
To request what our clerk stated to be on number 14, that after what's here, that the terms of reference will be adjusted by staff in order to make quorum without the council or councillor members.
Are you
being part of the mix.
needing clarification, or are you following?
Is the status quo motion being withdrawn?
Yeah.
Because that's on the floor right now.
Perhaps I'm not speaking clear here. I'm fine with how this is worded, only if it's added in there, another sentence stating that the terms of reference will be adjusted in order to make quorum without the voting, you said it much more eloquently, but I need that there. I don't want to just leave this that council liaison does not have to vote. I want them to be stated in the same motion that it is, the terms of reference for quorum will be adjusted.
So you're withdrawing your motion to status quo, but you're putting forward the motion with the amendment, you're amending the motion that's printed there to include the quorum.
Yes, because I can't apparently make a friendly amendment to my own motion.
You
Yes.
are, it's basically, that's what you're doing.
Yes,
I'm
it is.
leaving you the floor to withdraw and reintroduce the motion.
I will
with what you want.
withdraw the first motion, and I will ask that it be read as stated, number 14, with the addition that the terms of reference for voting will be adjusted by staff in order to meet quorum without the council membership.
So I think you're just saying don't count the council representative when the quorum calculation is being done. Yeah. Okay. So, Mr. Clerk, is that captured? Can you read what you've captured there? Sure that we're voting on, we all understand what we're talking about?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, that effective January 1, 2018, the council liaison position not have voting rights on any advisory committee, save and except the Healthy Lakes Steering Committee, and that the terms of reference be adjusted to remove the council liaison in the count for a quorum.
All right, questions to that? All right.
I didn't understand.
Councillor Somerville, did you have questions?
No, it's not a question, it's just, I was just explaining to Councillor Cat, that means that we're not included on the quorum then. That's exactly what that means.
Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry to beat this one. So does that mean that we're also reducing the number to meet quorum as well, or just removing council from making quorum? Are we lowering the number down even further?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to council. Essentially both.
Okay.
We'll remove council liaison as a position that is counted towards the quorum, and then we'll readjust the numbers as needed.
Perfect.
So if we're having issues with committee attendance, we can possibly raise those numbers, and we'll look at, canceled meetings. Now that I'm aware that every meeting is being canceled, every committee has that issue. We'll look at canceled meetings and maybe make a recommendation when these terms of reference come back forward that maybe this committee needs a couple more members so that we can meet that quorum. And we can set quorum whatever we like. It doesn't have to be 50%. It can be set lower if that's needed or justified.
Fantastic, thank you. Hopefully we're ready to vote on this.
All right, Councillor Cat?
Thank you. I take offense to the fact that councilors make motion, or in these committees as well. Quite often, because of our duties in the committee, we're trying to move things along faster than they can go, and more often than enough, we have to make a motion, and we can word it better than a lot of people in the committees. So that's why that happens quite often, and we actually have staff help that appreciate that as well. So if that doesn't happen, then the meetings will take probably 50% longer, and it will be less efficient.
And I don't think that means you don't have the ability to help somebody word a motion. That's not taking that away. It's just optically, when it goes into minutes, et cetera, that it is members of the committee that are putting forward the motions, and I would fully expect there's still conversation around the table that it's a jointly crafted motion because everybody seems to be aligned.
Well, staff seems to be able to be okay with it and actually compliment people on, or members of the committees on it. So I don't see a problem with it, and I can't support this the way it is.
Okay. Any other questions from council? All those in favor? Carried. Next item is the 15. Nope, that was...
Yes?
Yes, it was. Councillor Back. Are you moving it as...
Yes, I'm moving it as stated. I have a question. So what happens to this corporation?
Okay, the Municipal Services Corporation, if you recall, when we had the update, our township solicitor had agreed to complete the creation of the Municipal Service Corporation with no additional legal charges. So it was going to complete the formation of the corporations, so that we have that Municipal Services Corporation that we've invested time, energy, and money into, so that can be used, repurposed, if it doesn't deal with municipal, or if it doesn't deal with fiber initiatives, or it could be brought into an equation that does require a partnership for, or a fiber initiative or broadband initiatives, mainly due to the Connect to Innovate federal grant, is why the focus was taken away from the group that was on there, because a lot of the funding was going to come from the federal government to applicants that hopefully are successful in our area, because it identified underserved areas. So we really need this group to still stay together, but in the form of an advisory committee or an ad hoc one that's called when needed. But really, it's a wait and see until the grants are announced. It doesn't make sense to have meetings with this grant opportunity, sizable amount of money that the private sector has applied for, including Bell, including two other, Flash Fiber and Andrews Wireless, definitely ones I'm aware of. There could be other ones that have applied for that federal funding. The federal government has, also with the CRTC, has announced extra funding, $750 million of ongoing funds, so we think there's going to be an ongoing need for this group to advise on it. If an operator is successful in getting funds, then I would suspect that they would be communicating with the group to align, especially when we have facilities that are in those areas. Also, other future grants that come forward, it would be good to use that as a vehicle to rally up, to make sure we have applicants in our area going forward, and that it's not just left to the private sector. We'd like to engage with the private sector to make sure that we are not leaving opportunities on the table. The reason why it was added at the last minute is because there was no cost for us to keep the Municipal Services Corporation as status quo, because the legal fees were being covered, but then it was brought to our attention that the directors and officers and liability insurance was coming up due in October, so it didn't make sense to carry that on. We could convert them over to the advisory committee and then not have to pay that insurance, because we'd be covered under the township insurance policy for liability, because it would be an advisory committee.
So, do you not, though, as a corporation, have to file income tax, or you have to do year-end?
Annual filings would still have to be filed, but there's financial statements. There's no revenues going into the financial statements. Right now, everything is was tracked separately, but there's been no other activity since the last meeting that's on the Municipal Services Corporation. So the annual filing is required just to say it's still in existence. That would require the minutes, but as far as financial statements, there's no operating activity that will be captured under that corporation or the two corporations.
Okay, so to that, and I know it's a little off topic, but it's important, seeing that we've so far had expenses but not revenues, and this corporation was set up not as a not-for-profit but for a for-profit, will we be getting money back to the township because we had basically losses because you had expenses but no revenue?
No, it's a Municipal Services Corporation under Reg 39906, which it's treated separately as a public body, arm's length to the municipality, but still connected to the municipality, and that, just like the municipality, we don't pay taxes. It's not like if we had a deficit here, we'd get taxes back because there's no taxes paid. It's treated as a public corporation, so don't know if the treasurer wants to add anything onto it, but the Municipal Service Corporation is you're not capturing back anything. It's treated as, for tax purposes, it's treated as a public body.
Okay, so if we actually made money on it, we wouldn't have had to pay the revenue either?
That's right.
Oh, that's good.
As long as the rules are 90% of the revenues that come through are for owned by public bodies. As soon as you had more than that, then it could be taxable, and there's boundary restrictions as well if you're doing business outside of your boundaries. So. Any other questions on that? Councillor Kett?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I have a number of questions, and I've I've had a number of people question me about what happened with the revenues, and then I read the report from the finance department. There's a number of people there wondering where all the money went and where's the accounting for it. I realized that we voted on a committee of 16 people, and when I asked some of the people on the committee, they said, no, they haven't met and they don't know what's going on. So, is there any way we can get a report of what went on, and maybe for the next council meeting?
Yeah, we did have an update in June with all the financials and all the update, and there hasn't been anything after that because the summer recess, but then also we knew the Connect to Innovate grant was happening, so as far as the fiber initiative, we're on a wait and see on any successful recipients of that. So as far as the financials have already been disclosed, the report, any new, this conversion, okay, let me back up, at the I think it was the beginning of June meeting, the last meeting that we had, I did express to the members there that we may be converting to an advisory committee because the focus of the committee, a lot of it has been taken away from the federal government announcing their federal grant and their underserved funds, and that there would be a time when we would go back to the committee members to see if they were still interested, since the focus was changing on it, and to see if they still wanted to remain as members, and that we would come back with a report. So it would be dependent on how this motion is received today. If it receives support, then the communication would be brought back to the members to see if they still want to participate on the advisory committee, but it would be open to all those advisory committee members that they would stay on as in the same membership there.
Now, in the beginning, it was my understanding that what's called Municipal Service Corporation was to report to another Municipal Service Corporation, and it never has. So I want to know why it didn't, and when it is going to.
Municipal Service Corporation, a great deal of the time and energy was creating the bylaws for the corporation, and then the bylaws created by the OPCO would have been replicated by the HoldCo, but because the funds from this council were directed to the OPCO, it had to do all the legwork to create it, and then it could have been replicated by the HoldCo. It was communicated in the operating company that did not want to lose the MSC shell corporations, for lack of a better term, that have been created, and all this energy and time and resources put into it, that we wanted to make sure that's there for any other economic development initiative, any fiber initiative, or any other initiative that the township could utilize to fit in within the permitted uses, so that it wasn't, all for nothing. I would definitely say that the time and energy put into it was successful, in that without having that body, I do not firmly believe that we would have the engagement that we did with the applicants for the federal grant. So I think it was very useful to have that. There were initiatives that we were going down a path, and then when the federal government had announced their grant, it derailed what we were doing, because nobody had the knowledge that this was going to come forward from the federal government. But once it did, it didn't make sense to continue on that when federal funds were going to come and solve what we were trying to solve with the Municipal Service Corporation. So what was clearly that the direction was changed, so that was done in the June report when we came back to council, that significant changes have come about, as well as the MSC. It was expressed that that they would like to keep that, and members from Economic Development Committee that sit on that as well, it's expressed that yes, this is something that we have that could be utilized for other future councils, etc., could utilize that, and it's just a minimal cost to do an annual filing.
I understand all that. I'm about filing and everything. But what I really want to know is, like, I guess, what do we get for our money? What do I tell constituents when they say we threw our money away on ISP?
Well, I would be not saying you threw your money away on an ISP. If somebody says that, you could say, just like with the initiatives and a lot of the costs that were wrapped up into the ISP initiative, is that I firmly believe that the island would not have been a recipient of grant funds. So all those residents benefited from us as a council fighting for it. Me as attendee to Ottawa saying that the previous grant program that we received because this council was ambitious and took that on to really fight for solving our broadband deficiencies. So that is from us expending money and being very much leading a charge on wanting to be a part of the solution, and then the successive MSC creation to be able to have a vehicle that was arm's length to the council so that it could stand on its own 2 feet. Again, having applicants apply for that was a lot of work and time and energy from that MSC board. The operating board was spent dealing with proponents that wanted to work with the township and put forward application for funding, and I firmly believe that we were leading the pack when it came to the region on putting forward a plan on having funds be applied for and then filter through. So if it goes through the private sector, but it was helped facilitate through that MSC or the previous initiatives and the council supporting these initiatives, then I firmly believe that we have the attention, and me sitting on the provincial ultra-high-speed broadband working group with the province, I mean, we are seen out there as a very progressive municipality that is really pushing the need for this here, and it's still, the ripple effect is still out there. So when people say, did we sink funds into it and not have anything to show for it, I'd absolutely 100% wholeheartedly disagree that we actually did. We are recipients of the previous grant through a private sector. My opinion was because of the actions of this council, and that was $1.9 million that was received. So if you reflect some of the initial costs that were done, didn't unfold the way we wanted to, but I don't believe it would have happened if it wasn't for us. And also the Connect to Innovate, hopefully it's successful, but if it's not, there's still a lot of work that was done. If you read all those, the report that was done in June, that committee did tackle quite a bit of groundwork, and I think we're well positioned because broadband and fiber, it's not going away, it's just going to keep becoming more and more of a demand and a need for the community. So
don't get me wrong, the people on the island are not complaining. I'm just reading financial surveys.
Okay, any other questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. The next item is the 16, the bylaws. Councillor Back, are you moving it as printed, or you changing the words?
I have a question. So is this going to, just the way it's worded, we have a couple that are deferred, so is it, the bylaw in terms reference to it, I guess I'm making a change. Do we just assume that those two that are deferred are gone, or do we change?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Council, that's correct, yeah. So the bylaws in terms of reference to implement these changes noted above be forwarded for adoption. So those that haven't been changed won't be forwarded for adoption, so.
And those that were deferred to come back?
At the time, sorry. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the time of bringing those back, there'll be another recommendation the same as that, with any recommendations that we make, that the terms of reference, if the changes are implemented, be brought back for adoption.
So only on the ones passed today?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so you're moving it as printed then? Any questions on that? All those in favor? Carried. All right, now to our agenda. No, that was, no, that's the report, so. Do you need to? So, yeah, Councillor Cat, the first part of it that was the report was to be received. That was item number 1 that was moved with it. So, if you have any questions or general, we're going to take a short recess here for 8 minutes or so. But is there just a comment on the report that you wanted to make? But it's already moved, so.
Well, I don't know when we moved it. I'm sorry about that.
Well, is it just questions?
No, there's changes.
Okay. Well, you can talk to me when we're breaking for 8 minutes, so I'll call a short recess. Okay, we'll continue on with the agenda here on item number, consent agenda. Dealing with the, we have some committee, we have some agenda items, 10.2.2 we've dealt with. The next item, Councillor Drew has pulled 10.2.3. 10.2.5 pulled by Councillor Guido. Any other agenda items be pulled from the consent agenda? Councillor Back?
10.2.1.
10.2.1 capital project status report.
And, what the heck? I think that's it.
Any more? No? Going once? No? Okay. Any other items, Councillor? Councillor Kett, operating results. Any other items from the consent agenda to be pulled? Do you want me to read them again? 10.2.1, 10.2.3, 10.2.4, 10.2.5. Okay. All right. So the remainder of the items have been moved by Councillor Drew. All those items except for those being pulled. All those in favor? Carried. Next we go to Councillor Back with 10.2.1. Moving it as
Yes.
recommended.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just have questions. Page 17.
Sorry, what page was that?
17.
17.
So where it says 3.2, as of August 31st, 2017, spending on active capital projects is close to 3.3 million on a budget of approximately 9.4 million. Does that mean that to date, we've only used or spent 3.3 million of the 9.4, or is that just active, current, not closed?
Director Valentin.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That is actual expenditures that have gone through our accounts right now. There is a time lag in the invoices coming through versus the actual completion of projects. So at this point in time, through these active accounts, 3.2 has been invoiced and gone through our system.
And so near the end of the year, how much do you think of the 9.4 will be used?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know at this point. It depends on we would look to each project to identify the completion of the project and put a value to that if we don't receive all the invoices, and we would accrue that. It depends.
It's my concern if we put out to levy that these are needs and have to be done in a 2017 budget for 9.4 million, and that we only use or purchase 6 million. Do you know what I mean? Like, our tax base, our taxpayers are at sort of their threshold, and I'd hate to see that we're asking for things that are priorities that don't get spent, and it's been like that for years. So going forward to the 2018 budget, because I know you yourself don't like rollovers, I hope that's in consideration, that what our staff tag as must-haves and needs are actually purchased in that budget year as much as possible, because it's not fair to the residents to be paying for things that they don't get. So I'm just a little worried right now that it's 3.3. It's only a third of the budget.
Yeah, and just to remember, a large chunk of that is the one that's going to be funded through the federal and provincial government on line 6. So that we know is happening, and it's just a matter of when that goes through the books. But Director Valentin, I'll let you add.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. As mentioned, there are a lot of staff have been working very hard to get a lot of these projects done. We have limited resources, but I know that they've been working extremely hard and are moving forward, as you can see on the status that has come through from Director Coleman. There's a lot of work, a lot of time and effort and focus put on all of these projects. The actuals at this point in time, there is a lag, so we are processing invoices, but sometimes they're 3 months behind. So, we are, you know, as soon as we're getting them, we're processing them, we have to verify them, but there is a lag that's happening.
And I appreciate that, and I appreciate staff and all their time and effort. I'm just stating that if going forth, like, just if things can't be done in a budget year, then we shouldn't be asking for them. It's not at any fault of staff. It's just being realistic of what we can actually do and prioritizing those needs, because it's not fair, because it ends up devaluating whatever that capital project is if it gets rolled over to another year, because expenses always go up on things. So we need to be mindful of that, to have realistic, what can we actually do within this year, get it done, and not ask for too many extras, and not that they're extras, they're all priorities, but what can realistically be done in that year for the taxpayers to pay for that year, because that's only fair.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to give some context to that. Some projects start at the beginning of the year, some start at the middle of the year, some start in the fall of the year. And really, that's just the way the work plan works with the staff we have to get the job done. So some of these capital projects, it's not reasonable to expect for the given year that they are determined to be part of the budget by council, that they will be done in that given year. One, because of just workflow through the year, and two, because of some projects span a given year. They just can't be completed in 1 year, even if they are started at the beginning of the year. So there's two reasons. And I think, though, what is important in a policy we have in place is if a project doesn't start by this time of the year, then it gets rebudgeted for next year. Because if it's not started, that's another issue. But if it's started within the calendar year, 3/4 of the calendar year, then that should be just, that's the way it is. That's the way the work flows with the staff we have. In the past, I can tell you that projects were not started in the given year that they are awarded, and they were continued through the next year, and the next year, and the next year, where we have an eye on this now, and this is an example. This update report, which comes to council on a minimum semi-annual basis, to give you an idea of where these projects are. But I think you can see from this report, there's progress in all areas.
Oh, I agree. There's a lot of work done, but if you note the notes in the budget from the public, a lot of people say, I pay so much taxes and I only get garbage pickup and ambulance. So we as councillors, when we get the call, we need to know exactly what of my $9.4 million was used this year, and how was it used. And even if something is just starting, I don't care to see just completed. Even work in progress, we need to see that, because that's tangible. We can then go back to our constituents and say, lots of work's been done. You know, lots of work. This road's been paved. This sidewalk on this street's been done. You know, we've acquired two fire trucks. We've got this, but we're also starting on this. That becomes tangible. That's better than just my garbage and my mail and snow plowing. Although mail Canada Post is not ours, but thankfully. But that's what we need. We need tangible results to show, not just completed. And I understand that projects do take multiple years, but we need all of that, not just the completed and closed.
Director Valentin?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is a project status. There's a separate report that's a closed report, that those are complete and all invoices are in. There are several projects listed in this report that from a construction or a work progress are complete, but we haven't received all the invoicing, so I can't close those. I don't know if there's funding to be uncommitted at this point. But this is a comprehensive list of all the projects, so it should give you a good snapshot of where we are at this point in time.
Oh, that's good. And Director Coleman, did you want to add?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Just to further on that a bit, I don't think the financial is a good indication of where we are. because as our Director of Finance said, we don't have all the invoices, there's a lag. But if you look at the list, 43 projects are done or expected to be done by the end of the year, and 18 are being carried over for various reasons, but they've all been initiated, those 18 as well. So we've made a lot more progress than 30%, say, of the work.
I know, but sometimes when people read agendas, these are the numbers that pop out. When people read our newspapers, this will be the headline. So I want to clarify to the press that work is being done at the township, and it's not just the optics here look wrong. Like, you know what I mean? It looks like somebody could take an opportunity and make this into an interesting headline when it's not telling the true story. So that's why I wanted to bring this up, to show that work is being done.
So, you point taken that this is a interim, a report to show us that there is a lot of work being done. That, not looking at the financial side, but actually looking at the items on the list, that there's a lot of things that are happening. And as you're saying, it's not about, because the invoices haven't necessarily flowed through. Just using line 6 as an example, we know that the significant amount of more work is done than what's actuals here on the column there. So
I'm trying to avoid an interesting headline.
Yeah, I'm sure the media that is present here today is understanding the conversation that's being had and your concerns. So, Councillor Drew?
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else? I just wanted to reference too the report that we didn't pull, which was closing those projects there, and the fact that not all the projects that were in this report here that showed as being work being done, but that we're not listing the close because it's still open for those final invoices coming through. So, all right. With that being said, all those in favor? Carried. Next item is 10.2.3. Councillor Drew, strategic plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will move the recommendation. And just want to say that I totally agree with the conclusion on page 76, and I would add that with the input of our advisory committees, we were able to move ahead with our strategic plans. I also just wanted to ask, on page 73, council approval and implementation of the Honk Mobile pilot. Just wondered how that went.
Director Coleman or Mr. Director Heritage?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. The Honk Mobile project went very well, and staff is recommending that project continue into the future as well.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other comments or questions on that? I think this also is a report showcasing all the initiatives that staff and the work that's being done by the committees, the council. I think that is an excellent summary of all the achievements of the township. So I think it's great to see that all in one report. So it was moved by Councillor Drew as printed. All those in favor? Carried. Next, Councillor Kett, 10.2.4, operating results.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a...
Sorry, Councillor Kett, are you moving it as printed?
Yes.
Okay. Carry on.
I just have a couple of questions I'd like clarified. To the Director of Finance. First of all, how can we gauge I mean, you've got our percentage down at 59 with 67% of the year. A lot of our budget goes into roads that could be, obviously in the November and December. A lot of times I like to see actuals, like from 2016 with a percentage, and how do we look compared to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Because we did a restructure last year, I'm having difficulty providing prior year actuals. It should be easier next year when we've had a full year to come forward. The actuals are in line. There are some areas that are a little higher than they were last year, but there's a lot of entries that for instance, the revenue items and transfers from reserve haven't been booked yet into our system, so they're not reflective here. But I think overall, as identified in the report, we are on target for budget for the end of the year.
If you bear with me for a second, I've got one question about the Scugog Island Hall. Here it is. We've got expenditures, budget 15.9, actuals 9206, 58%, and then we've got revenues minus 2,000.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The revenues are credit balances, so that is a revenue item. So we've received more revenue this year and from that particular hall than we budgeted.
Than the budget.
Right.
And then it's at 150%. So they're actually 50% higher than rentals.
It appears to be, yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's just confusing the way it's there. Well, I understood that it brackets means negative, but okay, so we're happy with the rentals.
Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, my question is to the Director of Finance. On page 88 of our council agenda, I'm looking more for clarification. It refers to Ward 1, 2, and then there's payroll and expenditures, and then Ward 3, 4, payroll and expenditures. There's no mention of Ward 5, but the main question is, what is this for?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So these are our depots. So it's east and west.
Oh, okay.
That's how they've, I guess, historically been split. So it's not specifically by ward, but by the depots.
Okay, so it's just referencing the two depots. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Just a quick question, is that from the budgeting software then, that report?
Yes, it is.
That's
Mr.
exactly
Mayor,
as
thank
it is.
you.
So, and I know it referenced it in there, but when you're talking about the line item on the budget software, but you had mentioned that the actuals for the previous year will be filled in automatically from the budgeting software by using it in the 2017 year for 2018, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right, any other questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Next item is pulled by Councillor Guido, 10.2.5. Are you moving it as recommended?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may direct my question to Director Coleman. It's on page, let me just see, page 93 of our council agenda. Number 3 for Spring Boulevard. We read, and I'm sure we all did read the comments from our budget survey. If there's any road that is in dire need of something being done, it would be Spring Boulevard. My son has 2 friends that live on this street, and I joke with the families that they invite us over just so that I can drive on that street and see how deplorable that road really is. Appreciating that the $400,000 that is budgeted or forecasted needed to fix that road, is there anything else that we could do to fix this road to bring it up to some type of a drivable condition outside of the $400,000?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So this solution is for a hot asphalt pavement on it. We've looked at it from an engineering standpoint and felt that surface treatment wouldn't stand up very well there with all the churning movements because there's so many driveways along that section. So that didn't seem to be a good solution. We could put a layer of gravel down to improve what's there, which would be a significantly lesser cost. That could be an interim solution that we could do.
Has gravel been applied there before as a solution?
Well, I'll let our operations manager speak to this.
Thank you.
Gravel was applied on Spring Boulevard about 4 years ago.
Mike, Mr. Donnelly, sorry, we can't, they won't hear you, so if you can just come.
This is your moment of fame on YouTube,
yeah.
so.
Can't miss that.
No, absolutely not.
Turn around.
Gravel was applied there 4 years ago. It was a product called HL6, which had a lot of stone in it, and it did serve the purpose for the good summer month or the good weather months. But when it came time to plow the snow, a lot of it was just plowed off. So it's not the solution, you'd have to just put gravel down.
So if we were to apply the same solution, then the residents would be no further happy with us at all?
Not likely, and the other thing you have to take into consideration is the higher you bring that road, you're gonna have a lot of negative grade driveways.
So is there any other solution other than the $400,000 to do the proper hard surface ditching and drainage?
Surface treatment, in my opinion, isn't the fix for that road. Excuse me, it has to be hot mix.
Okay. And may I ask where this road is in our list of urgent roads or the priority of roads? Is it near the top?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, we're looking at a system of evaluating. We start with the roads needs study, and they call it now needs. Now, it's a very large list of roads that are now needs. So we're trying to refine it further by looking at traffic volumes, repair costs. We've got a list of about 10 things we're looking at to evaluate it. And honestly, it's not at the top of the list when you look at it with those criteria. So based on technical merit alone, I don't know that it will make the list. We'll look at it, but based on technical only, it probably won't make the list.
Thank you.
And I'm just, that list that we see with the technical one, is there any weighting to number of homes per 100 meters or something like that? I know that there will be a lot of roads that are in need, but it may service, you know, a couple of houses versus, I don't know how many homes are on that. I'm just trying to think of a roads needs analysis and then the supplementary technical analysis, because I agree there's many roads that need to have funding for it, and we're never going to get ahead of it. I know that it's impossible. It's just trying to deal with our roads and deal with the citizens that are paying taxes that we're receiving complaints from, and I receive tons of complaints on this road too, saying they've been promised something for 30 years, but it's not just a simple fix, as we discussed. It's something you don't want to throw money at that's going to be gone in a couple of years. So are items like this that are on here going to come back through the budget process then? Is that the idea?
Mr. Mayor, we don't look at necessarily the number of houses, but we are looking at the traffic volumes on the road. So the more houses there are, the more volume there will be. So that's definitely one of the factors we're looking at. I wasn't quite sure of the second part of that question.
Second part was, will this list is obviously, you know, a huge wish list of items that are on there. I'm just wondering how these get brought back for the budget process, because there's going to be these are the recommended, the needs that are definitely there, and then here's ones that, you know, have a scoring analysis, etc., or that might give an opportunity for council to weigh in on over and above the staff recommendations.
If you wish, we can bring a summary of, compare what your requests were to what the final recommended budget is, and at that point, council can add or take anything off the budget. That's their prerogative to do that.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Kett?
Thank you, Mayor. To the same road, when I put in my request, I was also going to put the tax revenue we get off the roads, because every bit of that road is taken up by houses, and it's you know that a lot of the taxes are up $25,000 a year, and these people can't enjoy the outdoors of their houses in the summer. A little bit better this year with all the rain, but because of the dust, they can't even barbecue outside. So, I mean, we are collecting a lot of taxes, and I think that should be one of the weighing points of the decisions, is the amount of taxes these people are paying as waterfront properties in the area.
Councillor Drew and Councillor Bryan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To that point, and also to, I think, Councillor Guido's point, part of the criteria for this reevaluation that you're doing is traffic volumes, is it not? So that would take into account the number of houses that are on the street and the number of driveways and so on and so forth. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Back?
Thank you. On page 94, number 7, Old Simcoe resurfaced from Carlin to line 8. As you know, another dreadful road, especially that one area that looks like it's going to collapse just south of the soccer fields. My concern is this has been on our list for the last 3 years. I'm hoping it will get done this year. If it doesn't, there are large dump trucks hauling fill and whatnot going on that road. The other day I saw a large dump truck hauling a really long trailer with heavy equipment. That's going to accelerate the failure of that road. I can even just imagine that one day that whole section is going to collapse. And you know the section I'm talking about where you've reapplied and put stuff. Not to mention there's 2 elementary schools there. Is there any way that the township can put a no heavy trucks, a load bearing on that road? That road is near failing. And I don't think it should be part of a hauling trucks for paving and whatnot, Mack trucks going past elementary schools to begin with. Is there any way that we can, if we can't get this done this year, that there's a ban of heavy trucks on that road?
I'm looking at Director Coleman or...
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. I don't know where the route those trucks are taking, if there's some project they're doing right in that area that they have to take that road, but if that's not the case, we can look at deferring them to another road.
And I can talk to you aside about that, but there's no reason why they can't use Simcoe and Old Simcoe. There's no reason for them to, those are both parallel roads within spitting distance of each other, and they're not saving any time. They're not doing work on the sewage anymore, but they were told that they weren't allowed to use that road anyhow. They had to use Simcoe, but I can tell you who is using it, and if we're going to extend that road, if we can't get to it this year, that's going to fail that road if we have large trucks like that on it.
Any other questions on this report? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. I know that other members may be sad that their reports weren't pulled, but I do want to say how just a comment generally on the budget survey. I really am happy to see that there were 137. So I know we're not voting on it, but I did want to recognize that, and that there are many expressions through that process that that had given comments, and maybe some people aren't happy, but there's definitely a desire for money to go towards roads. So I know that you will take that into consideration when you're bringing back a report to council, and I wanted to thank you and the department and all the staff members involved in putting forward that budget, because I think an enhanced communication is great for everybody, so helps us guide our decisions. Having said that, we are on to motion to adjourn by Councillor Guido. Councillor Drew? Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was a pretty heavy agenda, and I just wanted to recognize the amount of work that was done by our staff. These are very, very heavy reports, and it represents a lot of work. I just want to express appreciation to staff for the work done. Thank you.
Great. Any other comments from council before we go into adjourn? Councillor Back?
Thank you. Earlier we mentioned the TAG group at the library, and seeing that we're disbanding the youth council, is there any way, because we don't even see the minutes from those at the library board, is there any way that we can, as council, get communication from minutes from that, especially if it's something that we as council or that staff can address some of the youth concerns? Because right now they're operating sort of in their own fishbowl, and we don't know what they're wanting.
Just to clarify, does that youth committee report to the library board? They don't? They just meet?
But if there's something that perhaps could be important to to address for staff or for council to perhaps put wheels in motion, that those get to us. I don't know how that communication or link-up will happen, but...
Well, obviously, we communicating to Amy the council's desire to be more of an open line of communication. Likewise, if something comes where we want some youth input, we could certainly send something, direction that something be sent to the librarian or the library.
So could we have perhaps a letter to the CEO of the library stating that because the youth council committee is being disbanded, that there could be more open discussion if it's possible?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the councillor. Right now, I don't know if they even have agendas or minutes, so we can certainly find that out first. So we could talk with the CEO of the library, Ms. Coughlin, and find out more information from them, and whether they would like to sort of participate and make some recommendations to council. We can certainly find that out, absolutely.
Okay, Councillor Drew.
Thank you. That was a point you made and the clerk made, that if there are items that we would like their input or their advice on for youth activities or for youth involvement in the community, I'd suggest we go through that committee. Thank you.
And also, the communication for the disbandment of the Youth Advisory Committee, that'll happen after council ratifies it, and also I would want to make sure that obviously we would be thanking them for their service, but maybe we could connect them with the library board or library youth. What was the committee called? TAG. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We can add that to the letter of thanking them for their time on the committee, and then just make note that there is a teen advisory group at the library that they may want to investigate and look into. Right now I don't know their membership, but certainly we can do that.
Okay. Any other items? General business. All right. Motion adjourned, moved by Councillor Guido. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you.